Natalie Carver's hands trembled on the steering wheel as she turned onto her estate's private road 3 hours ahead of schedule. Something felt wrong, a mother's instinct screaming through her chest. The mansion loomed ahead, windows dark despite the afternoon sun. Before her key touched the lock, rough hands pulled her back. "Don't speak," Ethan Cole whispered urgently, his maintenance uniform smelling of paint and desperation. "Your children are in danger, right now." Through the door she heard it, her daughter's muffled sob, a sound that shattered her world. "Stay with us until the end, and comment which city you're watching from so we can see how far this story travels." The black Mercedes glided through Pacific Palisades like a shadow cutting through golden California light. Natalie Carver sat rigid in the driver's seat, her Armani blazer perfectly pressed, her expression carved from marble. 42 years old, CEO of Carver Industries, featured twice on the cover of Forbes. She was a woman who controlled boardrooms with a glance and turned failing companies into empires before breakfast. But today, control eluded her. Her phone buzzed for the 17th time in an hour. Another executive wanting approval, another crisis demanding her attention. She silenced it without looking. The quarterly meeting in downtown LA had ended 90 minutes ago, a triumph, actually. She'd secured a $70 million investment deal that would have made headlines in the financial district. Her team had applauded. Champagne had been poured. She'd walked out anyway. Something was wrong. She couldn't name it, couldn't rationalize it to her assistant who'd chased her to the parking garage asking if she felt ill, but it sat in her chest like a stone, heavy and cold, dragging her home with an urgency that bordered on panic. "Just a feeling," she'd muttered, knowing how absurd she sounded. Natalie Carver didn't operate on feelings. She dealt in data, projections, concrete facts. Yet here she was, flying down Sunset Boulevard at 20 miles over the speed limit, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth ached. The estate appeared through the eucalyptus trees. 8,000 square feet of Spanish colonial architecture, cream-colored stucco, and terracotta tiles gleaming in the afternoon sun. The fountain in the circular driveway sparkled, water cascading over imported Italian marble. Everything looked perfect. Magazine cover perfect. The kind of home that screamed success and stability. Natalie killed the engine and sat for a moment, feeling foolish. What exactly did she expect to find? Daniel would be in his home office, probably on a conference call for his investment firm. Claire would be practicing violin. Her lesson was at 4. Mason would be doing homework, and Ava would be drawing those elaborate fantasy creatures she loved. Normal, safe, boring. Except the house was too quiet. She grabbed her briefcase and pushed open the car door. The afternoon heat hit her immediately, that dry Los Angeles warmth that always felt like it was pressing down from above, but underneath it, something else. Tension. The air itself felt wrong, stretched too thin, like the moment before thunder cracks the sky open. Her heels clicked on the stone pathway. Each step echoed too loud in the stillness. Where was the gardener? Usually Miguel was trimming hedges this time of day, his portable radio playing Spanish ballads. The flower beds looked pristine but empty. Even the birds seemed subdued, their afternoon chatter reduced to nervous chirps. Natalie's hand reached for her keys, but before metal touched lock, someone grabbed her wrist. She spun, instinct flooding her veins with adrenaline, her other hand already swinging her briefcase as a weapon. A man stepped from the shadows of the portico, his calloused palm raised in surrender. Ethan Cole, the maintenance supervisor. 50-something, with silver threading through dark hair and permanent creases around his eyes, from years squinting in the sun. He wore his standard uniform, navy work shirt with his name embroidered over the pocket, canvas pants stained with wood varnish. "Mrs. Carver," he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't speak, please." She opened her mouth to demand an explanation, to ask why the hell her employee was manhandling her on her own doorstep, but something in his expression stopped her cold. His eyes were desperate, red-rimmed like he'd been crying or hadn't slept in days. His jaw worked silently, muscle jumping beneath weathered skin. "Your children," he said, each word careful and heavy. "They're in danger, right now." The stone in her chest became a boulder. Her briefcase hit the ground with a thud she barely registered. "What do you—" Ethan's finger pressed to his lips, urgent, almost violent. He pointed toward the house with his other hand, toward the massive oak front door with its beveled glass panels. Through the distortion, Natalie could make out shapes in the foyer, someone moving in the living room beyond. Then she heard it. Faint, muffled, but unmistakable. A child crying. Not the dramatic wail of a scraped knee or the whine of a denied cookie. This was different, suppressed, frightened. The sound a child makes when they're trying desperately not to make any sound at all. Every instinct screamed at her to burst through that door. Natalie lunged forward, but Ethan's grip tightened on her wrist. "Not yet," he hissed. "You need to see first. You need to understand what's been happening. Let go of me right now, or I swear to God, he'll stop if he knows you're here." Ethan's voice cracked. "He'll make it seem normal, and you'll never know. You'll never believe. I've watched this for 6 months, Mrs. Carver. 6 months of hell while you traveled to New York and London and Tokyo. Someone had to witness. Someone had to collect proof." The world tilted. Natalie felt dizzy, her expensive heels suddenly unstable on stone she'd walked 1,000 times. "What are you talking about? Who are you talking about?" But she already knew. Deep in that place where mother's instinct lived, in the primitive part of her brain that predated logic and reason, she knew. Daniel, her husband. The man she'd married 8 years ago after a whirlwind courtship. Handsome, charming Daniel Mercer with his boarding school pedigree and family money. He'd seemed perfect, stable where her first marriage had been chaotic, mature where her children's biological father had been reckless. A ready-made father figure who'd promised to love her kids as his own. "Show me," Natalie heard herself say. Her voice sounded strange, distant. "Show me right now." Ethan released her wrist and moved to the side of the house, gesturing for her to follow. They walked along the exterior wall past the climbing bougainvillea her mother had planted when they'd bought this place 5 years ago. Past the window to the kitchen where Anna, their housekeeper, usually hummed while preparing dinner. The kitchen was dark, empty. "I sent Anna away," Ethan whispered, reading her thoughts. "Told her there was a gas leak, called her a taxi. She doesn't know. She's kind, but she doesn't see. She's too focused on her work." They reached the living room windows, floor-to-ceiling glass that Daniel had insisted on during the renovation. "Natural light," he'd said, "makes the space feel open." Now Natalie understood they also made perfect observation points. Ethan positioned her at an angle, hidden by the thick curtains that were drawn almost closed. A sliver of interior remained visible. He handed her something, a small pair of binoculars, compact but powerful. Theater binoculars, maybe. "Look," he said, "and please, Mrs. Carver, please stay quiet until you've seen everything." Her hand shook as she raised the binoculars. The living room jumped into focus, her living room with its custom furniture and original artwork, and the grand piano nobody played anymore. The Persian rug she'd bought at auction, the fireplace they gathered around at Christmas. And there, in the center of that beautiful room, her 3 children knelt on the hardwood floor. Claire was 12, her dark hair pulled back in the ponytail she'd worn to school that morning. Her violin case sat against the wall, but she wasn't practicing. She knelt with her back straight, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the ground. Her face was blotchy and red. Mason, 10 years old, knelt beside his sister. His school uniform was rumpled, tie loosened. His glasses sat crooked on his nose, and his jaw trembled with the effort of staying still. Tears ran freely down his cheeks, dripping onto his white shirt. And Ava, 7-year-old Ava, with her wild blonde curls and gap-toothed smile. Natalie's baby girl who still slept with a stuffed elephant and believed in fairy gardens. She knelt smallest of all, her little mermaid backpack still strapped to her shoulders like she'd never been allowed to take it off. Her whole body shook with silent sobs. Natalie's vision went red at the edges. The binoculars shook violently in her grip. She started to lower them, to charge inside, but Ethan's hand on her shoulder stopped her. "Keep watching," he breathed. "He's about to come back." As if summoned, Daniel Mercer walked into frame. Natalie hadn't seen her husband in 3 days. She'd been in San Francisco for the pre-meeting before today's big pitch. He'd texted regularly, called twice. Everything normal. Now he appeared in their living room wearing gray sweatpants and a Yale t-shirt, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. Whiskey, probably. His dark hair was disheveled, his jaw covered in stubble. He looked nothing like the polished investment banker who left for work each morning in a three-piece suit. He circled the children slowly, taking a long drink. Natalie watched his mouth move. Even without hearing the words, she could see the cruelty in how he shaped them, sharp, cutting. His free hand gestured dismissively at Claire, then jabbed toward Mason. Mason flinched, his whole body jerking back. Daniel laughed. Natalie saw his shoulders shake with it, and took another drink. "I can't hear," Natalie whispered desperately. "What's he saying?" Ethan pulled something from his pocket, an iPhone, old and cracked. He tapped the screen several times, then held it up near the window. After a moment, sound crackled through, tinny and distant, but audible. He'd planted a microphone inside. He'd bugged her house. Any other time, she would have been furious about the privacy violation. Now she was grateful. Daniel's voice came through, slurred slightly, but venomous. "Pathetic, all three of you. You know that? Absolutely pathetic. Your mother's out there building an empire, and what are you? Dead weight, anchors dragging her down." Claire's voice, small and wavering. "Dad, please. We did our homework. We did everything you—" "Don't call me Dad." The words exploded through the speaker. Natalie saw Daniel advance on Claire, saw her daughter shrink back. "I'm not your father, am I? Your real father was a loser who abandoned you, left you behind like garbage, and now you're my problem. Do you have any idea what I gave up marrying your mother, the women I could have had, the freedom?" Mason spoke up, his voice cracking. "That's not fair. We didn't ask—" "Shut up!" Daniel wheeled on him. "Did I say you could speak? Did I give you permission? You're 10 years old, Mason. 10. And you still can't tie your shoes properly. You still cry when things get difficult. What kind of man are you going to be? I'll tell you, a failure, just like your bio dad." Natalie's knees buckled. Ethan caught her, held her upright as the binoculars fell from her numb fingers. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening in her home. Daniel had always been strict, sure. He believed in discipline, in structure. But this? "How long?" she managed to ask, the words scraping her throat raw. 6 months that I know for certain," Ethan said quietly. "Maybe longer. It started small. I'd hear him raise his voice when I was fixing the fence or cleaning the pool. Just snippets through walls. I thought it was normal parent stuff at first. But it got worse. Consistent. Always when you traveled. He'd send Anna away, say the kids could manage for one evening. Then He gestured helplessly at the window. At the nightmare playing out in crystal clear detail. "Why didn't they tell me?" Natalie's voice broke. "Why didn't my children tell me?" "He threatened them," Ethan said. "I heard it 2 months ago. Told them if they said anything, you'd be so disappointed. Told them you were stressed with work, that they'd only burden you. Told Claire she'd be sent to boarding school if she made trouble. Told Mason that real men don't tattle. Told Ava that mommies stop loving children who lie." Each word was a knife. Natalie pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting the urge to vomit on her own manicured lawn. Through the window, Daniel had started pacing again. "You know what your mother said before she left on this trip? She said, 'Daniel, thank God I have you. I couldn't manage the kids and the company without you.' She actually thanked me for putting up with you 3 disappointments." "That's not true," Ava whispered. She was crying openly now, her small face crumpled in anguish. "Mommy loves us." Daniel laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. "Does she? Then why is she always gone? Why does she spend more time with strangers in boardrooms than with you? Face it, kid. Work is more important than you. I'm more important than you. You're just obligations, checkboxes on her to-do list." Claire was sobbing now too, trying to stay quiet, but failing. Her shoulders heaved with the effort. Mason reached out to hold his sister's hand, and for a moment Natalie felt a surge of pride through her horror, her boy, her sweet boy, trying to protect his sibling. Then Daniel saw it. "Did I say you could move?" His voice went cold, and suddenly he was kneeling in front of Mason, grabbing the boy's face roughly in one hand. "Did I say you could touch your sister? You follow the rules when you're in my house. You kneel. You stay silent. You think about what disappointments you are, until I decide you've learned your lesson. Let go!" Mason tried to pull away, and Daniel's other hand shot out, gripping the back of the boy's neck. That was it. That was the moment Natalie Carver, Forbes featured CEO, woman who'd built a fortune through ruthless negotiation and steely composure, completely shattered. She turned from the window and headed straight for the front door. Ethan called her name, but she was beyond hearing. Her hand found the door handle, yanked it open. The alarm system beeped. She'd forgotten to disarm it, but she didn't care. Let it wail. Let the whole neighborhood hear. She crossed the foyer in 6 strides, her heels clicking like gunshots on marble. The living room door was partially closed. She could hear Daniel still talking, his voice dripping poison. Your mother hired me, basically, married me to play daddy so she wouldn't have to. Do you understand that? You're products of a transaction. She bought herself a father figure for her broken little family, and I was stupid enough to sign up. Natalie hit the door with her palm. It slammed open, cracking against the interior wall with enough force to chip paint. 4 faces turned toward her. 3 children, expressions cycling rapidly from fear to confusion to desperate, fragile hope. And one man, her husband, frozen with his hand still on Mason's neck, whiskey glass arrested halfway to his lips. For a moment, nobody moved. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked, the air conditioning hummed. A car alarm went off somewhere down the street, distant and irrelevant. Then Ava screamed, "Mommy!" and the spell broke. "Natalie?" Daniel released Mason and stood up smoothly, his expression rearranging itself into something approximating surprise. "You're home early. I didn't hear you come in." "Kids," Natalie said, her voice eerily calm despite the hurricane raging in her chest. "Stand up." Claire scrambled to her feet immediately, pulling Ava with her. Mason stood more slowly, rubbing his neck where red marks were already blooming. They all stared at their mother like she was a ghost, like they couldn't quite believe she was real. "Go to the kitchen," Natalie continued. "All 3 of you, now." "Natalie, wait," Daniel started, setting his glass down on the coffee table. "This isn't what it looks like. The kids were misbehaving, and I said now!" Natalie's voice rose to a roar that made even Daniel step back. "Go!" The children ran. Claire grabbed Ava's hand and practically dragged her from the room, Mason close behind. Natalie heard their footsteps pounding down the hallway, heard the kitchen door slam. Only when they were gone did she turn her full attention to the man she'd married. Daniel had recovered his composure. He straightened his shoulders, ran a hand through his hair, and gave her that charming smile that had won her over 8 years ago. "Honey, I know this looks bad, but you have to understand they were being impossible today." Claire talked back. Mason refused to do his homework, and Ava, "Shut up." Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said shut up." Natalie took a step into the room. Her hands were fists at her sides, nails digging crescents into her palms. "Don't say another word. Not one more word. Natalie, you're being dramatic. I'm their father figure, and sometimes discipline—" The door behind her opened. Ethan Cole walked in, still wearing his maintenance uniform, his old iPhone held up like a weapon. Daniel's face went pale, then flushed angry red. "What the hell is he doing in here? Natalie, why is the maintenance man in our private—" "Because I asked him to be," Natalie said softly, dangerously. "Ethan, show him." Ethan tapped his phone screen. Daniel's voice filled the room, recorded and damning. "Your mother hired me, basically. Married me to play daddy so she wouldn't have to—" Daniel lunged for the phone, but Ethan stepped back smoothly, still playing the recording. "Your real father was a loser who abandoned you, left you behind like garbage." "Turn that off!" Daniel's composure was cracking, his handsome face contorting. "You have no right to record me in my own home. That's illegal. California's a 2-party consent state for private conversations," Natalie cut in. "But there are exceptions for documenting child abuse." She pulled her own phone from her blazer pocket. "And before you try to destroy Ethan's evidence, you should know I've just texted myself copies of everything. Every recording. Every video. There are cameras, Daniel. He installed cameras." The color drained from Daniel's face completely. He looked from Natalie to Ethan and back again, his mouth opening and closing silently. "How long?" Natalie asked. "How long have you been terrorizing my children?" "It was discipline. You don't understand how difficult they—" "How long?" "I don't know. A few months, maybe a year?" Daniel's voice climbed higher, panicked now. Natalie, you're always gone. Someone had to maintain order. Someone had to teach them respect. And respect? Natalie's laugh was hollow. You made them kneel on the floor like prisoners. You told them I don't love them. You grabbed my son by the neck. I barely touched him. He's fine. Kids need firm hands sometimes. My father used to. I don't give a damn what your father did. Natalie advanced on him, and despite being 6 inches taller and 70 pounds heavier, Daniel backed away. You terrorized children. You isolated them. You made them afraid in their own home, and you did it while I trusted you. While I worked myself to exhaustion, partly to provide for this family, and partly because you convinced me I could, because you had everything handled here. I did handle it. The house ran smoothly. The kids went to school and did their homework and hated coming home, Ethan said quietly. Mason started having panic attacks every day around 3 o'clock. Did you know that, Mrs. Carver? School nurse called me once because he was hyperventilating. I was listed as an emergency contact because Anna had put me down months ago when she couldn't reach you or Mr. Mercer. I picked him up, and you know what he said? He said, "Please don't tell Dad I got sick, please." Natalie felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not while Daniel could see. "Natalie, please." Daniel's voice shifted, went soft and pleading, the voice he'd used when they were dating, when he'd promised to be her partner. "I love you. I love our family. I made mistakes, okay? I'll admit that. The drinking got out of hand and I said things I didn't mean, but we can fix this. We can do therapy. I'll cut back on work stress. There is no we." Natalie's voice was steel. "There is no our family. You are not part of my family. Not anymore. You can't just, I can." She pulled her phone up, showing him a number she'd already dialed. "This is my attorney. One tap, and I'm filing for divorce and a restraining order. One tap, Daniel. Give me a reason not to." He stared at her, and she watched him cycle through emotions. Anger, fear, calculation. She could see him weighing options, trying to find an angle. "Where will I go?" he asked finally. "This is my home too." "You have 1 hour," Natalie said. "Take your clothes, your laptop, whatever you need. Ethan will supervise to make sure you don't destroy any evidence or harass the children. Anna's already packed some of your things. Yes, I texted her too. She'll meet you here with your bags. And Daniel, if you try to contact my children, if you come within 500 feet of them or this house, I will bury you. Do you understand? I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers who make their careers destroying men like you." She tapped the screen. Her attorney answered on the first ring. "Natalie? Is everything—" "Michael, I need you at the house, now. Divorce proceedings and restraining order, emergency custody protection. I'll explain when you arrive." She hung up without waiting for a response. Daniel stood motionless, his world clearly collapsing around him. "You're making a mistake," he said hoarsely. "You'll regret this. The kids need stability, and you can't provide that alone. You're too busy, too focused on work. They'll end up damaged, and it'll be your fault." "They're already damaged," Natalie said quietly. "Because of you. But I'm going to fix it, starting right now. Ethan, please help Mr. Mercer pack. I'm going to be with my children." She walked towards the kitchen, then paused at the doorway. Without turning around, she said, "And Daniel? The kids were right about one thing. I do love them, more than anything in this world, more than my company, more than this house, more than my own life. I'm sorry I didn't show them that enough. I'm sorry I was so blind to what was happening, but I promise you, I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure they know they are loved, wanted, and safe. You'll never hurt them again." She didn't wait for a response. She walked down the hallway, past the family photos that now seemed like lies, past the expensive artwork and decorator touches that suddenly meant nothing. The kitchen door was closed. She could hear crying on the other side, all 3 children, their sobs creating a heartbreaking chorus. Natalie pressed her palm flat against the wood, took a deep breath, and whispered a prayer to whatever God might be listening. Then she pushed the door open and stepped inside. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward her, brown, green, and blue, all swimming with tears. Claire stood protectively in front of her siblings, arms spread wide like she could shield them. Mason held Ava, who had her face buried in his shoulder. They looked terrified. Of her? Of Daniel? Of everything? Babies, Natalie breathed, and her voice finally broke. I'm so sorry. She dropped to her knees on the kitchen floor, the same floor where they'd eaten breakfast that morning, where Ava had spilled orange juice and Claire had complained about a math test. Normal, safe, everything she'd failed to protect. I didn't know, Natalie said, tears finally spilling free. I didn't know what he was doing. If I'd known, I never would have. We wanted to tell you, Claire said, her voice tiny. But he said you'd be angry. He said we'd ruin everything if we complained. He said you were too important to bother with our problems. No, 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 no! Natalie reached out, and after a hesitation that crushed her soul, Claire came to her. Then Mason. Then Ava, all three children piling into her arms in a tangle of limbs and tears and desperate, hungry affection. You are not problems. You are my everything, my whole world. I'm sorry I made you think otherwise. I'm sorry I was gone so much. I'm sorry I didn't see. Is Dad leaving? Mason asked against her shoulder. Yes, honey, he's leaving. He's not coming back. Good, Ava said fiercely, her small voice muffled. He's mean. He made Claire cry every day. Natalie held them tighter, rocking slightly, the way she used to when they were babies. How had she let it get this bad? How had she been so focused on quarterly reports and board meetings that she'd missed her children's suffering? Things are going to change, she promised them. I'm going to be here more. I'm going to make sure you feel safe. And we're going to get help. People who can help us heal from this. All of us together. They stayed like that for a long time, crying together on the kitchen floor, while afternoon sun streamed through the windows and the pool filter hummed outside, and somewhere in the distance, a door slammed as Daniel Mercer left their lives forever. Eventually, Natalie heard footsteps. She looked up to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his expression gentle. He's gone, Ethan said simply. His car just pulled away. Anna collected the rest of his things. Your attorney's here. He's in the living room waiting. Natalie nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you. For everything, for watching over them when I couldn't, for having the courage to show me the truth. Ethan's eyes were red-rimmed, too. I have a daughter, he said quietly. Had. She and my wife died in a car accident 5 years ago. Drunk driver. I couldn't save them, but I could save your kids. I had to. Someone had to. Claire pulled away from Natalie and walked to Ethan. Without a word, she hugged him. This maintenance man who'd witnessed their private hell and cared enough to document it, to protect them, to risk his job and maybe his safety to make sure someone knew. Thank you, Claire whispered. Thank you for being brave for us. One by one, the other children joined the embrace. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, then his arms came around them, and he started crying too, quiet, shoulder-shaking sobs that spoke of old grief finding new purpose. Natalie stood slowly, her knees protesting. She looked at this strange tableau, her children and their unexpected guardian, all holding each other in the wreckage of what had been. Outside, the sun was setting. Golden light painted the kitchen walls, warm and gentle. Tomorrow would be hard. There would be lawyers and therapists and difficult conversations. There would be healing that took months, maybe years. There would be nightmares and setbacks and moments when the damage seemed irreparable. But today, Natalie Carver had come home 3 hours early. Today, she had seen the truth. Today, she had chosen her children. And that, she thought as she joined the embrace, was where everything began again. The attorney left at 9:30, his briefcase stuffed with recordings, photographs, and a signed affidavit from Ethan Cole that detailed 6 months of systematic emotional abuse. Michael Reeves, a shark in a $3,000 suit, had listened to everything with the detached professionalism of a man who'd seen worse. But even he'd flinched when Ethan played the recording of Daniel grabbing Mason's neck. This is airtight, Michael had said, standing in the foyer with his phone already pressed to his ear, calling judges and filing emergency motions. Restraining order will be granted by morning. Custody is yours, no question. He won't get within shouting distance of those kids. I'll make sure of it. Now the house sat quiet in the darkness, every light blazing like Natalie could burn away the shadows with electricity alone. She'd checked every lock twice, set the alarm, even wedged a chair under the front door handle. Irrational, maybe. But Daniel still had keys, and she didn't trust his compliance. Tomorrow, the locksmith would come. Tonight, paranoia felt like survival. The children were upstairs. She'd tried to get them to eat dinner. Anna had left a casserole before departing in tears, apologizing over and over for not seeing what was happening under her nose. But no one had appetite. Claire had picked at rice. Mason had drunk some water. Ava had simply curled into Natalie's lap and refused to move until exhaustion finally claimed her. Natalie had carried her daughter upstairs at 8, tucking her into bed, still wearing her little mermaid backpack, because Ava had started crying when anyone tried to remove it. Some security object, Natalie realized, something Ava could carry, could control, in a world that had proven terrifyingly beyond her control. "Stay," Ava had whispered, her small hand gripping Natalie's wrist with surprising strength. "Please stay." "I'm not going anywhere, baby. I promise." "You said that before. You always go." The words had hit like bullets. Natalie had stretched out on the narrow twin bed. Ava curled against her chest and stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling until she felt her daughter's breathing even out into sleep. Even then, Ava's hand hadn't released its grip. It had taken 20 minutes to carefully extract herself, and another 10 to convince herself that Ava wouldn't wake up the moment she left. The baby monitor, dusty from years of disuse, now sat on the nightstand, volume turned all the way up. Mason had gone to his room without being asked, closing the door quietly behind him. When Natalie knocked 30 minutes later, he'd said he was fine in that tone that meant exactly the opposite. Through the door, she could hear him crying, muffled sobs he was trying to hide in his pillow. "Mason, honey, can I come in?" "I'm okay, Mom." "You don't have to be okay. None of us have to be okay right now." Silence. Then the door lock clicked open. Natalie pushed inside to find her son sitting on his bed in pajamas, his glasses on the nightstand, his face blotchy and swollen. His room looked exactly as it always did. Star Wars posters, Lego sets on shelves, homework scattered across his desk. Normal. But Mason looked shattered. "I should have been stronger," he said immediately, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them behind a dam. "I should have protected Claire and Ava. I'm the only boy. I should have—" "Stop." Natalie sat beside him and pulled him close. "You're 10 years old. You shouldn't have to protect anyone from an adult. That was never your job. But I'm weak. Dad said—" He caught himself, winced. "Daniel said I cry too much. That I'll never be a real man because I'm soft." "Mason, look at me." She waited until his green eyes met hers. "Crying doesn't make you weak. Feeling things doesn't make you soft. You know what takes real strength? Surviving what you survived. Holding your sister's hands when you were scared too. That's courage. That's being a man in the ways that actually matter. He said you married him because I needed a father. Because I wasn't enough on my own." Natalie felt her heart crack wider. "Your father, your biological father, he had problems I couldn't fix. He left because of his issues, not because of anything you did or didn't do. And I married Daniel because I thought he'd be good for all of us. I was wrong. But you, Mason, you have always been enough, more than enough. You're smart and kind and funny, and I am so, so proud to be your mom." Mason started crying again, and this time he didn't try to hide it. Natalie held him the way she used to when he was small, rocking slightly, humming the lullaby her own mother had sung to her. Outside a car drove past. The house settled on its foundation with creaks that now sounded ominous instead of familiar. "Will he come back?" Mason asked eventually. "No, I won't let him." "What if you have to go to work? What if you're in another city and he—" "I'm not going anywhere, not for a long time. Work can wait. You three can't." Mason pulled back, studying her face like he was searching for lies. "You always say work is important." "You're more important. I should have shown you that before. I'm sorry I didn't." They'd sat together until Mason's breathing slowed and his body went heavy with sleep. Natalie had lowered him to the pillow, pulled the blanket up, and left the hall light on because Mason had asked, not in words, but in the way his eyes darted toward the darkness when she'd reached for the switch. Now it was just Claire. Natalie found her oldest daughter in the bathroom, sitting on the floor with her back against the tub, still fully dressed. Her violin case lay open beside her, the instrument gleaming in the harsh fluorescent light. Claire held the bow like a weapon, turning it over and over in her hands. Claire? Her daughter didn't look up. I broke a string today, during practice. I told him it was an accident, that the string was old, but he said I did it on purpose. To waste his money, to be difficult. Natalie lowered herself to the floor, ignoring her suit skirt wrinkling on bathroom tile. It's not his money, and strings break, it happens. He made me stand in the corner for 2 hours before you came home. He said wasteful children don't deserve comfort. Claire's voice was flat, emotionless. The bow spun in her hands. I had to use the bathroom so bad I thought I'd have an accident, but I knew if I moved, he'd make it worse. Oh, sweetheart. I'm 12 years old, Mom. I almost wet myself like a baby because I was too scared to move. Do you know how pathetic that is? That's not pathetic. That's terror. That's what he did to you. Claire finally looked up, and her eyes were ancient, too old, too knowing. Why didn't you see it? The question hung between them, impossible to answer adequately. Natalie had asked herself the same thing 17 times since this afternoon. Why hadn't she noticed Claire's increasing anxiety? The way Mason had started having stomach aches every Sunday night? How Ava had stopped drawing her family in art class? I don't know, Natalie admitted. I was traveling too much, working too much. I thought Daniel was handling things. I thought you would tell me if something was wrong. He said we couldn't. He said you'd be disappointed in us for complaining. He said families who love each other don't tattle. Claire set the bow down carefully, precisely. He said you were already stressed, and if we made things harder, you might leave too, like Dad did. Your father's leaving had nothing to do with you. That's what you said, but then you married Daniel so fast and he became our new dad, and I thought maybe the first one left because we were too much trouble. So I tried to be less trouble. I tried so hard, Mom. The tears came then, silent and devastating. Claire cried like someone who'd learned to do it quietly, efficiently, without making too much noise or taking up too much space. Natalie gathered her daughter into her arms, appalled at how thin she'd gotten. Had Claire been skipping meals? Losing weight from stress? You are not trouble, Natalie said fiercely. You are my daughter, my brilliant, talented, beautiful daughter. And I failed you. I let work consume me. I let Daniel convince me everything was fine. I should have seen. I should have known. I wanted to tell you, so many times, but he'd be nice when you called. He'd stand there while I talked to you and smile, and I knew if I said anything, he'd make me pay for it later. That's over now. He's gone. He's never coming back. Claire pulled away, wiping her face roughly. But you'll go back to work eventually. You'll have trips, meetings. What if he finds a way? I quit. The words were out before Natalie had consciously decided to say them, but once spoken, they felt right. Inevitable. Claire blinked. What? I quit. Or I will tomorrow. I'm going to call the board and resign as CEO. I'll stay on as a consultant if they want, but only remotely. No more travel, no more 70-hour weeks. I'm done choosing work over you. Mom, you can't. You built that company. You love it. I love you more. Natalie cupped Claire's face in her hands. You and Mason and Ava. That's what matters. The company will survive without me, but you three need me here. Actually here. Not just physically present, but mentally checked in. I can't do both anymore, so I choose you. Daniel said, you'd never choose us over work. Daniel was wrong about a lot of things. They sat together on the cold bathroom floor, Claire's head on Natalie's shoulder, until the house sounds changed around them. The ice maker in the kitchen, the air conditioning cycling on. Normal sounds that had witnessed so much abnormal cruelty. I don't think I can sleep in my room tonight, Claire admitted quietly. Then sleep in mine, all three of you. We'll have a sleepover, like when you were little. We're too old for that. Nobody's too old for feeling safe. They gathered the children. Mason woke immediately, still on high alert, while Ava never fully surfaced from sleep, and relocated to the master bedroom. Natalie's California king suddenly felt appropriately sized as three children arranged themselves across it. Ava claimed the middle, still clutching her backpack. Mason took the left side, pressed against the wall. Claire stretched out on the right, her violin case on the floor beside her like a security guard. Natalie took the chair in the corner, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She wouldn't sleep. Couldn't. Every sound made her jump. Was that a car in the driveway? Footsteps on the porch? Daniel had keys. Daniel knew the alarm code. Daniel could... Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it, heart hammering, then saw the caller ID. Ethan Cole. She stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed. Hello? Mrs. Carver, sorry to call so late. I just wanted to check. Are you all okay? We're managing. The kids are scared. I don't think any of us will sleep much tonight. I'm parked outside. Natalie moved to the window at the end of the hall. Sure enough, a beat-up Ford truck sat at the curb, barely visible under the streetlight. She could make out Ethan's silhouette in the driver's seat. You don't need to do that, she said, though relief flooded through her. I know, but I will anyway. At least for tonight. Until you get the locks changed and feel secure. I've got a thermos of coffee and a good book. I'm not going anywhere. Ethan, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. Just take care of those kids. They're good ones. They deserve better than what they got. After they hung up, Natalie stood at the window for a long moment, watching that truck. A virtual stranger, a man she'd barely spoken to beyond the sprinklers need adjusting or can you fix the back gate, sitting guard outside her house because he cared more about her children's safety than most of her actual family. She thought about calling her mother in Connecticut, but it was past midnight on the East Coast and explaining this nightmare at 1 a.m. felt impossible. Her sister would say, I told you Daniel was too good to be true, with that smug older sibling superiority. Her brother would offer money and solutions without actually listening. They meant well, but they didn't understand. Instead, she texted her assistant. Taking indefinite leave, cancel everything, we'll explain later. Then her VP of operations, call emergency board meeting for tomorrow, need to discuss leadership transition. The responses came quickly, confusion, concern, questions she didn't answer. She silenced her phone and returned to the bedroom. The children were actually sleeping, exhaustion finally overwhelming fear. Ava's mouth hung open slightly. Mason had curled into a ball, knees tucked to his chest. Claire's hand rested near her violin case, fingers twitching slightly like she was playing in her dreams. Natalie settled back into the chair and watched them breathe. How many nights had she missed this? How many bedtimes had she skipped for conference calls with Tokyo or London? How many school plays and soccer games and parent-teacher conferences had she delegated to Daniel because a client meeting couldn't be rescheduled? She'd built an empire, put her face on magazine covers, made Forbes' most powerful women list 3 years running, and in doing so she'd handed her children to a monster and called it good parenting. The shame was physical, a weight in her chest that made breathing difficult. Her phone buzzed again. Michael Reeves. Restraining order granted. Effective immediately. 500-yard minimum distance. Any violation means immediate arrest. You're covered. Small mercy, but restraining orders were paper. They didn't stop determined men. They just gave you legal recourse after they'd already done damage. Around 2 a.m., Ava woke up screaming. Natalie was beside her in seconds, gathering her daughter close. Shh, baby. I'm here. You're safe. He was here. He was in the room. He said... Ava gulped air, hyperventilating. Mason woke next, then Claire. Both sat up, eyes wide and frightened in the darkness. It was a nightmare, Natalie said calmly, though her own heart was racing. Just a bad dream. Daniel's not here. He can't be here. There's a court order. But what if he doesn't care? Ava sobbed. What if he comes anyway? Before Natalie could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Ethan again. Everything okay? He asked immediately. I heard screaming. Nightmare. We're fine. I'm doing a perimeter check, just to be sure. Through the window, Natalie watched his silhouette exit the truck and walk around the property, checking gates and windows. Something in her chest loosened slightly. They weren't alone. Someone was watching. There's a man outside, Claire said, peering around her mother. In our yard. That's Ethan. He's making sure we're safe. The maintenance man? Yes. He's been protecting you for months, even when I couldn't. Mason climbed out of bed and joined them at the window. They watched Ethan complete his circuit and return to his truck, giving a thumbs up toward the house. He's lived in his truck sometimes, Mason said quietly. I heard Anna talking about it. After his family died, he couldn't afford his apartment anymore. He showers at the gym and sleeps in parking lots. Natalie's throat tightened. This man who had nothing had given everything to protect children who weren't his. Why did he help us? Ava asked, still hiccuping from tears. Because he's a good person. Because some people do the right thing even when it's hard. Daniel said good people don't exist, Claire murmured. He said everyone's selfish. Everyone's just looking out for themselves. Daniel was wrong about that too. They returned to bed, but this time Natalie lay down with them, Ava plastered to her side and Mason's hand holding hers. Claire positioned herself at the foot of the bed, sitting up, self-appointed guardian of her siblings. You should sleep, Natalie told her. Someone needs to watch, in case. I'm watching. Ethan's watching. You can rest. But Claire just shook her head, and Natalie recognized that look. The hypervigilance, the inability to relax. Trauma had carved itself into her daughter's nervous system, and it would take more than one night to undo that damage. Dawn came slowly, gray light creeping across the bedroom in degrees. Natalie must have dozed because she woke to find all three children staring at her like they needed confirmation she was real. Morning, she said, her voice rough from disuse. You stayed, Ava whispered, like this was miraculous. I told you I would. But you usually leave before we wake up, for work. Another knife of guilt. How many mornings had she snuck out at 5 a.m. to beat traffic, leaving Daniel to handle breakfast and school prep? Hundreds, probably. Thousands over 8 years. Not anymore, Natalie said. From now on, I'm here for breakfast, for dinner, for everything in between. Mason's stomach growled audibly, breaking the tension. Despite everything, they all laughed, tentative and fragile, but real. I'll make pancakes, Natalie announced, then paused. Or we could order them. I should probably mention I'm a terrible cook. Daniel wouldn't let us have pancakes, Claire said. He said they're wasteful, too much sugar. Well, Daniel doesn't make the rules anymore. Pancakes it is. Extra syrup. They migrated downstairs as a unit, none of the children willing to separate from Natalie or each other. The kitchen looked different in morning light, less crime scene, more just a kitchen. But the memory of yesterday hung heavy. Natalie's phone exploded with messages the moment she turned it back on. Her mother. What's this about taking leave? Her sister. Call me immediately. Her assistant. The board is in emergency session. They need you. Her VP. You can't just quit, Natalie. We have the Singapore deal closing next month. She silenced them all and called the one number that mattered. It's me, she said when Ethan answered. Are you still outside? Just left to get coffee. Heading back now. Come to breakfast, please. The kids want to thank you properly. 30 minutes later, they sat around the kitchen table. Natalie, her 3 children, and a maintenance man who'd appointed himself their guardian. IHOP delivery boxes covered the surface. Pancakes, waffles, French toast, bacon, eggs, orange juice. Too much food, but nobody cared. Ava ate an entire Mickey Mouse pancake. Mason had seconds of everything. Claire picked at her food but managed more than Natalie had seen her eat in months. Mr. Cole, Claire said suddenly, why did you install the cameras? Ethan set down his coffee, considering his answer carefully. I have had a daughter, Emily. She'd be about your age now, Claire, 13 this year. His voice caught. I couldn't protect her from the drunk driver who hit their car, but I could protect you. I had to. It would have killed me to stand by and do nothing. Thank you, Claire said simply, for doing what you didn't have to do. You're welcome. Where will you go now? Mason asked. Now that you don't have to watch us anymore? I haven't thought that far ahead. Natalie had, though. She'd been thinking about it since 3 a.m. when sleep proved impossible. I have a guest house, she said. Over the garage. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen and bath. Nobody's using it. You could stay there. At least temporarily. Ethan blinked. Mrs. Carver. Natalie. And I'm serious. You clearly don't have stable housing. You just spent the night in your truck for us. The least I can do is offer you a proper bed. Plus, she glanced at her children's faces. I think the kids would feel safer knowing you're close, at least for a while. Would you stay? Ava asked, turning those blue eyes on Ethan with devastating innocence. Please? You're nice. Ethan's composure cracked. His eyes went wet and he had to look away, jaw working. I don't want to intrude on your family. You're not intruding, Mason said. You're helping. The guest house has been empty for 2 years, Natalie added. It's fully furnished, has its own entrance. You'd have complete privacy but be on site if we needed anything. And frankly, having someone here I trust would make me feel better about security until things settle. I can't pay rent. Not much anyway. I don't want rent. I want someone I trust nearby. Someone who proved they care about my children's well-being more than their own comfort. That's worth more than money. Ethan studied his hands, calloused and scarred from years of manual labor. If I stay, I earn my keep. Maintenance work, repairs, driving kids to activities, whatever you need. Deal. They shook on it, this strange arrangement born from crisis. A billionaire CEO and a maintenance man, bound together by 3 traumatized children and a shared understanding that money couldn't fix everything, but presence might help. After breakfast, Natalie called her board. I'm resigning as CEO, she announced without preamble. Effective immediately. I'll consult remotely for 3 months to ensure smooth transition, but I'm done with the day-to-day operations. The explosion of voices was predictable. Protests, arguments, pleas. She let them run their course, then said simply, My children need me. That's non-negotiable. Promote Jennifer to CEO. She's been ready for years. I'll stay on the board if you want, but my executive duties end today. You're making a mistake, someone said. No, working 80 hours a week while my kids suffered in silence was the mistake. This is a correction. She hung up before they could argue further and felt something lift from her shoulders. Fear, maybe, or the crushing weight of trying to be everything to everyone and failing catastrophically at the things that mattered most. The locksmith arrived at 10. By noon, every lock in the house had been changed. New alarm code, motion sensors on the perimeter. Ethan supervised the installation with the intensity of a man who'd clearly done security work before. You were military, Natalie observed, watching him check camera angles. Marines, 2 tours, learned a lot about threat assessment. He adjusted a sensor. Your previous system was garbage. Anyone with YouTube in 15 minutes could have bypassed it. Is Daniel that kind of threat? Ethan's expression went grim. He's a coward who attacks children. That makes him unpredictable. Better to overprotect than underestimate. Anna returned in the afternoon, still crying, apologizing in Spanish and English. I should have seen, Senora. I should have known. You didn't know because he hid it well, Natalie assured her. You're not responsible. But I was here. I cleaned their rooms. I made their lunches. How did I miss? Because predators are good at hiding. Because he waited until you left. Because he manipulated everyone. Natalie took the housekeeper's hands. Anna, I need you now more than ever. The kids need normal. They need your cooking and your kindness and your terrible jokes that make Mason groan. Can you do that? Anna nodded fiercely, wiping her eyes. See, of course. Anything for the babies. The therapist arrived at 3. Dr. Sarah Chen, recommended by Michael Reeves as the best child trauma specialist in Los Angeles. 50-something, kind eyes, zero nonsense. She spent 20 minutes with each child individually, then an hour with all 3 together. Natalie watched through the one-way mirror in her home office. Another installation from the afternoon, making space for therapy sessions so the children wouldn't have to leave their safe zone. They're resilient, Doctor, Chen said afterwards, sitting across from Natalie in the office. But they're also deeply wounded. Claire has developed perfectionist tendencies and anxiety. Mason shows signs of PTSD. Ava has attachment trauma. None of it is permanent, but healing will take time. Months, maybe years. Whatever it takes. Good. Because they need you present. Not just physically, but emotionally. No checking email during dinner. No working late while they're still awake. Your presence is the medicine right now. I resigned this morning, Dr. Chen smiled. Then you're ahead of where most parents start. They scheduled sessions, twice weekly for each child individually, plus family therapy on Saturdays. Dr. Chen also recommended a therapist for Natalie. You experienced trauma too, witnessing what happened to them, and gave them homework. trust exercises, communication strategies, ways to help the children feel safe expressing their needs. That evening, they ordered pizza and ate in the living room, the same room where yesterday's horror had unfolded. Natalie had considered avoiding it, but Dr. Chen had advised against it. You reclaim spaces by creating new memories in them, she'd said. Make that room about laughter and family time instead of fear. So they sprawled on the floor with pizza boxes and paper plates, watching an animated movie Mason had picked. Ethan joined them, sitting slightly apart until Ava dragged him closer. You're part of family movie night now, she declared. I am? Yes, because you're our friend, and friends watch movies together. Natalie caught Ethan's expression, stunned gratitude mixed with grief for the family he'd lost. He probably hadn't watched a kid's movie in years, probably avoided anything that reminded him of Emily. But he stayed. And somewhere around the scene where the characters sang about found family, Natalie saw him wipe his eyes discreetly. Later, after the children had gone to bed, separately tonight, making small brave attempts at normalcy, Natalie and Ethan sat on the back patio. The pool glowed aqua in the darkness. Somewhere in the hills, coyotes howled. I meant what I said about earning my keep, Ethan said. I can fix things, build things. I'm good with my hands. I believe you. But Ethan, you also saved my children. That's a debt I can never repay. I don't want repayment. I want... He stopped, struggling with words. After Emily and Rebecca died, I stopped caring about anything, went through motions. Work, sleep, work, sleep. I was just existing, waiting to die, basically. What changed? Your kids, seeing them suffer. It woke something up in me, made me angry, made me care again. He looked at her, his eyes reflecting pool light. I'm grateful for that. Sounds twisted maybe, but helping them helped me remember I'm still alive, that there's still good I can do in this world. You did more than good. You gave them their lives back. We both did. You believed me. You acted immediately. A lot of parents wouldn't have. Natalie thought about that. How many mothers heard similar stories and chose disbelief? Chose their partners over their children because acknowledging the truth meant their whole world collapsed? She'd been lucky. Her instinct had overridden any loyalty to Daniel, but it easily could have gone differently. Tomorrow I want to take them somewhere, she said. Somewhere that feels safe and happy. Maybe the beach? The beach is good. Open space. Hard for anyone to approach unnoticed. You're still thinking about security. Always. Until Daniel's proved he's not a threat. Even then, probably. They sat in comfortable silence, two broken people beginning to heal through unlikely friendship and shared purpose. Inside, a child cried out. Both Natalie and Ethan stood immediately, but then they heard Claire's voice, murmuring something soothing to Ava. The crying stopped, a door closed softly. They're taking care of each other, Ethan observed. They always have. I just didn't realize how much they'd had to. Natalie's phone buzzed. Daniel's number. She almost didn't answer, but Ethan gestured for her to pick up. He was already recording on his own device. Evidence, if needed. What do you want? Natalie said coldly. I want to see my kids. Daniel sounded drunk, his words slurring. I have rights. You can't just cut me off. The restraining order says otherwise. That's temporary. I'll fight it. I'll prove you're an unfit mother who works too much to actually parent. You'll what? Present the recordings of you terrorizing them? Show the judge the bruises on Mason's neck? Maybe we can play the audio of you telling Ava her mother doesn't love her? Natalie's voice was ice. Michael has everything, Daniel. Everything. You have no case, no leverage, and if you violate the restraining order, you'll go to jail. Are we clear? Silence. Then, this isn't over. Yes, it is. Lose this number. Lose our address. Lose any memory you had of being part of this family. You're done. She hung up and immediately forwarded the recording to Michael. Another violation. Another piece of evidence if they needed it. He's scared, Ethan said. Good. Scared people make mistakes. Will he come here? Not if he's smart, but we'll be ready if he's stupid. Natalie looked at this man who'd become their unlikely protector, standing guard on her patio like a sentinel. I keep thinking about alternate timelines, she admitted. What if I hadn't come home early? What if you hadn't been brave enough to intervene? What if— Don't. Ethan's voice was firm. That way lies madness. You did come home. I did intervene. Your kids are safe now. That's what matters. Are they, though? Safe or just safer? Both. And every day they'll get a little more of both. That's how healing works. Not all at once, but in degrees. Above them, stars emerged as the city lights dimmed. Natalie thought about calling her mother, decided against it. Tomorrow. Everything difficult could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, her children slept in beds with new locks on every door and a guardian watching from the guest house, and their mother finally present. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't healed. But it was a beginning. 3 weeks later, Natalie stood in the kitchen at 6 a.m., watching coffee drip into a carafe she'd barely used in 5 years. The house was quiet except for normal sounds. The refrigerator humming, birds starting their morning chorus, Ethan's footsteps on gravel as he did his morning perimeter check. Sounds that had become routine, almost comforting in their predictability. Almost. Because underneath the routine, tension still thrummed through every moment. The children were healing, yes, but healing wasn't linear. Yesterday had been good. Claire had actually laughed at dinner, a real laugh that crinkled her eyes. Mason had asked Ethan to teach him to change a tire. Ava had drawn a picture of their house with everyone smiling outside it. But the night before that, Mason had woken up screaming from nightmares 3 separate times. Claire had a panic attack when she'd gotten a B on a math test, convinced she'd be punished. Ava refused to let Natalie out of her sight for 6 straight hours, shadowing her from room to room like a terrified duckling. Progress and setback. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Dr. Chen kept saying this was normal, expected even, but normal didn't make it easier to watch. Natalie's phone buzzed. Michael Reeves, texting at an ungodly hour because lawyers apparently never slept. Daniel's attorney filed motion to dissolve restraining order, hearing scheduled for Friday. He's claiming the recordings were obtained illegally and you're alienating him from the children. She stared at the message, coffee forgotten. They'd known this was coming. Michael had warned that Daniel wouldn't just accept being cut out of their lives, that men like him needed control and would fight dirty to get it back. But knowing it intellectually and facing it were different things. Her fingers moved across the screen. What are our chances? Excellent. Judge Peters hates abusers and loves evidence. We have both. But be prepared. He'll try to make you look like the villain. Let him try. Footsteps on the stairs made her pocket her phone. Mason appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up at odd angles, glasses askew. He wore the Superman pajamas she'd bought him last week during their trip to Target, a normal, mundane shopping trip that had felt revolutionary after years of Daniel buying their clothes without input. Morning, Mom. Morning, sweetheart. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. He climbed onto a bar stool at the kitchen island, watching her pour orange juice. I keep thinking about Friday. So the kids knew about the hearing. Of course they did. She tried to shield them from the legal proceedings, but children always found out. They listened at doors, overheard phone calls, picked up on adult tension like radio signals. Michael says we have nothing to worry about, Natalie said carefully. The evidence is overwhelming. The judge won't— What if he wins? What if the judge makes us see him again? The raw fear in Mason's voice made Natalie's chest ache. She moved around the island and pulled him into a hug, feeling how his body stayed rigid, prepared for disappointment. That won't happen, I promise. I won't let him near you. You can't control judges, though. They have power. They make decisions. Mason's words came faster, anxiety speeding his speech. What if Daniel lies? What if he seems nice in court and the judge believes him? What if— Mason, Natalie pulled back to look him in the eyes. Listen to me. We have recordings, videos, months of documentation. We have Dr. Chen's testimony about the trauma you've experienced. We have everything we need, and if by some impossibility the judge ruled against us, I'd appeal. I'd take it to higher courts. I'd sell everything I own to fight this. You're not going back to him. None of you are. But what if you can't stop it? What if the law says— Then we'll leave the country if we have to. Mason blinked. You'd do that? In a heartbeat. You think I care about houses or businesses compared to your safety? I'd live in a tent in another hemisphere before I'd let him touch you again. Some of the tension left Mason's shoulders. Not all. It would take more than words to undo weeks of fear, but enough that he leaned into her again, accepting comfort. Claire appeared next, already dressed despite the early hour. She'd been doing that lately, getting up at dawn, putting on clothes like armor before facing the day. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it must hurt, every strand controlled. I heard what you said, she told Natalie without preamble, about leaving the country. You were eavesdropping. I was coming downstairs and you were talking. Claire's chin lifted defensively. Would you really? Leave everything? Yes. Your company? This house? All your work? All of it, without hesitation. Claire studied her mother's face like she was searching for cracks in the statement, places where commitment might falter under pressure. Natalie held her gaze, letting her daughter see the absolute truth. Okay, Claire said finally, and something in her expression softened slightly. Okay, I believe you. Ava wandered in last, still half asleep, dragging her stuffed elephant by one ear. She climbed into Natalie's lap without asking, curling up like she was 3 instead of 7. The Little Mermaid backpack had finally been retired 2 days ago, a small victory Dr. Chen had celebrated as significant progress. Is Daniel coming back? Ava asked, her voice muffled against Natalie's shirt. No, baby. But there's a court thing. So all 3 of them knew. Natalie should have expected this, should have sat them down for a formal conversation instead of hoping to protect them through ignorance. Yes, there's a hearing, Natalie admitted. Daniel's trying to convince a judge that he should be allowed to see you, but he won't win. The judge will see all the evidence of what he did, and they'll keep the restraining order in place. What if we have to see him at court? Claire's voice went tight. Will he be there? In the same room? No. Michael arranged for you to give testimony via video from a separate room. You won't have to face him. But you will. I will. And I'm not afraid of him. Not anymore. The back door opened and Ethan came in, smelling of morning air and coffee from his own pot in the guest house. He'd been living there for 3 weeks now, and his presence had become essential. Not just for security, though that mattered, but for normalcy. He fixed breakfast some mornings, helped with homework, taught Mason basic car maintenance, and showed Ava how to build a birdhouse. He existed in their lives without demanding anything, a steady presence that asked for nothing but gave everything. Morning, everyone, Ethan said, hanging his jacket by the door. Perimeter's clear, sprinklers are acting up again in the west garden. I'll fix that after I take Mason to school. I can drive them, Natalie said. You don't have to. I know, but it's my morning routine now. Besides, Mason and I are discussing the internal combustion engine. We're up to spark plugs. Mason managed a small smile. He's teaching me how cars work, so I can fix things myself someday. Useful skill, Natalie agreed, grateful beyond words for this man who'd appeared in their lives like a guardian angel in maintenance clothes. They fell into breakfast rhythm, Ethan making scrambled eggs while Natalie handled toast, Anna arriving to start lunch prep and fussing over everyone, the children slowly waking up fully. It looked almost normal, almost like a regular family on a regular morning. Except regular families didn't have court hearings to fight off abusive ex-stepfathers. Regular families didn't flinch at unexpected sounds or check locks compulsively or wake up screaming 3 times a week. After the kids left for school, Ethan driving, Natalie waving from the driveway like she'd done every morning for 3 weeks, she returned to the kitchen to find Anna crying quietly over the sink. Anna, what's wrong? I saw him yesterday. The housekeeper's voice shook. Mr. Daniel, he was parked at the end of the street, just sitting in his car, watching the house. Ice flooded Natalie's veins. What time? Around 4. When the children came home from school. I almost called the police, but then he drove away. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because the children were happy yesterday. Senora, they were laughing. I didn't want to ruin it with fear. But now, with the court thing. Anna wrung her dish towel between her hands. I'm scared. What if he tries something? Natalie was already dialing Michael. He answered on the second ring, sounding annoyed. This better be important. I'm in a deposition. Daniel violated the restraining order. He was parked outside the house yesterday watching the children. The annoyance vanished instantly. You have proof? Witness testimony from my housekeeper. Maybe security footage. Ethan installed cameras. Get me that footage. Now. This is exactly the kind of violation that will bury him in court. She heard papers rustling. I'm leaving this deposition. Meet me at my office in an hour with everything you have. Natalie found Ethan in his workshop, really just the guest house garage he'd converted into a workspace. Tools hung neatly on pegboards, projects in various states of completion. He was sanding a wooden jewelry box, probably for Claire, who'd mentioned wanting a place to keep her grandmother's necklace. I need the security footage from yesterday, Natalie said without preamble. Around 4 p.m., Anna saw Daniel parked outside. Ethan set down the sandpaper immediately. Son of a bitch! I was inside repairing the dishwasher. I didn't see him. Can you pull the footage? Already on it. He moved to a laptop set up on a workbench, fingers flying over keys. Multiple camera angles appeared on screen: front gate, street view, side yard, back patio. He scrolled through timestamps until he found 4:13 p.m. There, a silver Audi. Daniel's car. Natalie recognized it immediately, parked across the street. The angle wasn't perfect, but she could make out a figure in the driver's seat. Ethan zoomed in, enhanced the image. Daniel's face appeared, slightly grainy but unmistakable. He was staring directly at the house, phone in hand. He's taking pictures, Ethan said grimly. See? He's holding the phone up, pointing it toward the driveway. Where the kids were getting out of your truck. Yeah. Ethan's jaw clenched. I should have seen him. Should have been watching. You can't watch everything. That's why we have cameras. Natalie pulled out her phone. Send this to my email. Michael needs it immediately. While Ethan worked on the transfer, Natalie called the police. She explained about the restraining order, the violation, the footage. The officer who responded sounded bored until she mentioned the recording devices. You have video evidence, time-stamped? Yes, crystal clear. We'll send a unit to document the report. Don't delete anything. And ma'am, if he shows up again, call 911 immediately. Restraining order violations are taken seriously, especially involving children. After she hung up, Natalie sank into the folding chair Ethan kept in the garage. Her hands were shaking, adrenaline making her fingers twitch. He's not going to stop, she said quietly. Is he? Even with legal consequences, even with everything against him, he's going to keep trying. Ethan crouched in front of her, his weathered face serious. Men like Daniel don't accept losing control easily. In his mind, you took something that belonged to him. Not people he loved, property. And he wants it back. The kids aren't property. We know that. He doesn't. Ethan stood, pacing the small space. I've seen this before. Guys who snap when their authority is challenged. Most of them are cowards who back down at the first real resistance. But some... He trailed off, shaking his head. Some what? Some escalate. They can't handle the humiliation of losing, so they double down, get dangerous. You think Daniel's dangerous? Physically dangerous? I think he's drunk most evenings, desperate and losing everything. That's a volatile combination. Ethan met her eyes. I'm not trying to scare you, I'm trying to prepare you. We need better security, not just cameras, actual security, personnel. You mean bodyguards? I mean professionals who know how to protect high-risk families. People who can escort the kids to school, watch the house, respond if something happens. I'm one man, Natalie. I can't be everywhere at once. The use of her first name, he rarely did that, emphasized his seriousness. Natalie wanted to argue, to say it was excessive, that Daniel wouldn't actually hurt anyone. But she'd thought he wouldn't hurt the children emotionally either, and she'd been catastrophically wrong. Okay, she said. Arrange it. Whatever you think we need. It'll be expensive. I don't care. Price isn't a factor when it comes to their safety. Ethan nodded and pulled out his phone. I know some people from my Marine days, good people who do private security now. I'll make calls. By noon, 2 former Marines, Jackson and Torres, both built like refrigerators and trained in executive protection, were walking the property with Ethan, identifying vulnerabilities. By 3 p.m., they'd installed additional motion sensors, upgraded the gate security, and established a rotation schedule. One of them would be on site at all times, 24/7, until the threat was neutralized. This feels like overkill, Natalie murmured, watching Jackson test the panic buttons he'd installed in every room. Better overkill than underkill, Torres replied. She was smaller than Jackson, but moved with deadly efficiency. Your ex sounds unstable. Unstable people are unpredictable. We prepare for worst-case scenarios so they never happen. When the children came home from school, they froze at the sight of two strangers in tactical gear examining their house. It's okay, Natalie said quickly, intercepting their fear. These are friends of Ethan's, Jackson and Torres. They're going to help make sure we're safe. Why? Claire asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Did something happen? There was no point lying. They'd find out anyway, and lies destroyed trust. Daniel was parked outside the house yesterday, Natalie admitted. He violated the restraining order. We have footage, and the police are involved. These two are here to make sure he doesn't try it again. Mason went pale. He was watching us? He was. But he can't now. Not with cameras and security and people watching. He made a mistake, and it's going to cost him in court. When's court? Ava asked, clutching her elephant tighter. Friday, 3 days from now. Will we have to see him? No, you'll give your statements from a separate room via video. He won't be able to see you or talk to you. And when it's over, the judge will keep the restraining order in place, probably make it permanent. This is almost finished, babies. Just a few more days. But 3 days felt like an eternity when every moment held potential danger. That evening, Michael arrived with a briefcase full of documents and a grim expression. I filed an emergency motion based on the violation, he said, spreading papers across the dining room table. Judge Peters is furious. She's added the violation to Friday's hearing and indicated she's inclined to extend the restraining order to a permanent injunction. Daniel's attorney tried to claim he was just driving through the neighborhood, but the footage proves he was stationary for 17 minutes. That's surveillance, not coincidence. What's Daniel's strategy going to be in court? Natalie asked. He'll paint himself as the victim. The caring stepfather unjustly separated from children he loves. He'll claim you're vindictive, that you manipulated evidence, that his discipline was taken out of context. Michael's expression was hard. It's bullshit, and I'll eviscerate it. But you need to be prepared for him to lie, convincingly. He'll cry. He'll talk about how much he misses them. He'll probably bring character witnesses, colleagues, friends who've never seen his private behavior. Will it work? Not with Judge Peters. She's seen this exact performance 100 times. And we have something abusers rarely face, concrete evidence. The recordings are devastating. Dr. Chen's testimony about the trauma is ironclad. And the kids' own statements, Michael pulled out transcripts of their therapy sessions, provided by Dr. Chen with the children's permission. Claire's description of being made to stand in corners for hours, Mason's panic attacks, Ava's nightmares. No judge can read this and side with him. But he'll try. He'll try. That's all he can do. After Michael left, Natalie found Ethan on the back patio again, his thinking spot, apparently. He stood at the railing, looking out at the pool lights reflecting off dark water. You okay? She asked, joining him. Thinking about Friday, about what happens if Daniel gets desperate. You think he'd do something at the courthouse? I think cornered animals bite. Ethan turned to face her. I've arranged for Jackson and Torres to escort you and the kids. Separate cars, different routes. We're not taking chances. This is insane. 3 weeks ago, I was a CEO worried about stock prices. Now I have armed bodyguards and fear for my children's physical safety. This is the reality of leaving an abuser. They don't go quietly, they fight. Natalie laughed bitterly. You know what the worst part is? I chose this. I brought him into our lives. I married him thinking he'd be good for us. And instead, I handed him ammunition to destroy my children's sense of security. How do I forgive myself for that? The same way your kids are learning to forgive themselves for not being perfect victims. With time. With therapy. With understanding that you made the best decision you could with the information you had. Ethan's voice was gentle. You couldn't have known what he was hiding. Abusers are skilled at deception. That's what makes them dangerous. I should have known. I'm their mother. And you're also human, fallible, capable of being fooled. He paused, weighing words. I couldn't save my daughter from a drunk driver. I replay that day constantly. What if we'd left 5 minutes earlier, 5 minutes later? What if I'd driven instead of letting Rebecca drive? What if? It'll make you crazy if you let it. How do you live with it? By making different choices now. By saving who I can save. By turning tragedy into purpose. He gestured toward the house where 3 children slept under heavy protection. Your kids are alive. They're healing. You caught the abuse before it destroyed them completely. That's what matters. Not your guilt, not your self-flagellation, your action going forward. Natalie felt tears building again. She'd cried more in 3 weeks than in the previous 10 years combined. I'm terrified of Friday. I know. What if something goes wrong? What if Daniel? Then we handle it. Together. You're not alone in this anymore. The word together settled something in her chest. She'd been alone for so long, alone in her marriage to a man who'd turned out to be a monster, alone in her company where every decision was ultimately hers, alone in the crushing responsibility of single parenting while maintaining a career. But now she had Ethan, had Jackson and Torres, had Michael and Dr. Chen and Anna, a whole network of people who'd appeared in her darkest moment and decided to stay. Thursday passed in anxious preparation. Michael drilled Natalie on testimony, what to say, what not to say, how to stay calm under cross-examination. Dr. Chen came to the house to prepare the children for giving their statements, walking them through the process until they felt as comfortable as possible with something inherently uncomfortable. Remember, Dr. Chen told them, sitting in the living room with all 3 kids, you're not on trial, you're not in trouble, you're simply telling the truth about what happened to you. The judge needs to hear your voices to make the right decision. What if we cry? Ava asked. Then you cry. That's okay. Crying shows the judge that these events affected you, that they were real and painful. There's no shame in tears. What if Daniel gets mad? Mason's voice was barely a whisper. He can't hurt you. He won't even be in the same room. And even if he was, there are security officers in the courthouse. He can't touch you. His power over you is gone. That night, none of the children slept in their own beds. They all ended up in Natalie's room again, clustered together like they were physically holding each other up. Natalie lay awake listening to their breathing, memorizing it, praying to God she wasn't sure she believed in that tomorrow would go smoothly. At 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, then something made her answer. Natalie. Daniel's voice, slurred and desperate. Please, I need to talk to you. She sat up carefully, not wanting to wake the children, and moved into the hallway. Ethan's light was on in the guest house. He'd see if she needed help. You're violating the restraining order by calling me. I don't care. I'm losing everything. My job found out about the accusations. They put me on leave. My family won't talk to me. I have nothing, Natalie. Nothing. You did this to yourself. No, you did this. You took my family. You turned my kids against me. They were never your kids, and they turned against you because you terrorized them. I was disciplining them. Someone had to. You were never here. His voice rose to a shout. You abandoned them for your precious career, and I was left to deal with 3 spoiled brats who didn't respect authority. Natalie's hand tightened on the phone. Is that what you're telling yourself? That you're the victim here? I am the victim. I gave up my freedom to marry you. I took on your damaged children. I played father to kids who weren't mine. And this is how you repay me? By destroying my life? You destroyed your own life when you made children kneel on floors and told them they were unloved. I never... He stopped, breathing hard. It wasn't like that. The recordings are taken out of context. There's no context that makes what you did acceptable. I want to see them. Before court. I want to explain. They need to understand. Absolutely not. Please, Natalie, please. I'm begging. Just 5 minutes. I'll apologize. I'll tell them I was wrong. Just let me... No. And you need to hang up now before I record this call and add it to the evidence pile. You're making a mistake. If I lose tomorrow, I have nothing to lose. Do you understand? Nothing to lose. The threat was obvious. Natalie's blood went cold. Are you threatening my children? I'm telling you the truth. A man with nothing to lose is dangerous. Think about that. The line went dead. Natalie stood frozen in the hallway, Daniel's words echoing in her mind. Then she was running down the stairs, across the yard, pounding on the guest house door. Ethan answered in seconds, already dressed, clearly never having slept. What happened? Daniel called. He's drunk. He made threats. Said a man with nothing to lose is dangerous. Her words tumbled over each other. We need more security. We need... Jackson? Ethan called into the darkness. The security guard materialized from somewhere near the front gate. Protocol red. Possible threat. Lock it down. Within minutes, the property was on full alert. Torres took position inside the house near the children's room. Jackson monitored cameras. Ethan called the police to report the threatening call. And Natalie sat in her kitchen at 3:30 a.m., shaking with adrenaline and terror, while armed guards protected her sleeping children from a man who'd once promised to love them. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't bring them to court. What if he tries something? He won't, Ethan said firmly. He's bluffing, trying to scare you into backing down. Don't let him. But what if... Natalie. Ethan gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. We've prepared for this. We have security. We have evidence. We have the law on our side. Daniel's desperate because he's losing. That makes him dangerous, yes, but it also makes him sloppy. He just gave us another violation with that phone call. Michael will crucify him with it. I'm so scared. I know. Fear is smart right now, but don't let it paralyze you. Your kids need you strong tomorrow. They need to see that their mother isn't afraid of him, that his threats are empty. Can you do that? Natalie took a shaking breath, then another. Somewhere inside, beneath the terror, she found that core of steel that had built a company from nothing, that had fought through boardrooms full of men who underestimated her. That had survived poverty and single parenthood and every other obstacle life had thrown at her. Yes, she said, I can do that. Good, because we're going to walk into that courthouse tomorrow, and we're going to win. And Daniel Mercer is going to learn that threatening children has consequences he can't imagine. Dawn came too quickly. Natalie woke the children at 6, helped them dress in the clothes Dr. Chen had suggested. Comfortable, but neat. Nothing too formal that would make them feel like performers. Claire chose a simple blue dress. Mason wore khakis and a polo shirt. Ava picked her favorite overalls with flowers on them. They ate breakfast in near silence. Even Anna seemed subdued, making pancakes with mechanical efficiency. Jackson and Torres did final security checks. Ethan loaded the car with bottled water and snacks, preparing for a long day. At 7:30, they left in a 3-car convoy. Ethan drove Natalie and Ava. Jackson took Claire. Torres drove Mason. 3 different routes to the courthouse, arriving separately, minimizing risk. The courthouse loomed downtown, all concrete and glass and the weight of justice. Natalie held Ava's hand as they walked up the steps, flanked by security. Media had gathered somehow. Someone had leaked the case, and cameras flashed. Mrs. Carver! Mrs. Carver! Is it true your husband abused your children? Will you be seeking full custody? Do you have any comment on the allegations? Ethan moved between her and the cameras, his bulk blocking most shots. No comment. Let us through. And inside, the courthouse was quieter. Michael met them in the hallway, looking sharp in his best suit. Ready? He asked. Natalie looked at her 3 children, standing close together, faces pale but determined. They'd survived weeks of abuse. They'd survived the revelation. They'd survived nightmares and therapy, and the slow, painful work of healing. They could survive this too. We're ready, she said. Then let's finish this. The courtroom was smaller than Natalie had imagined, more administrative than dramatic. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The judge's bench loomed dark wood and imposing. Gallery seats stretched behind a divider, mostly empty except for Daniel's attorney and a few people Natalie didn't recognize. His character witnesses, probably. People who'd testify about what a great guy he was at the office, how he volunteered at charity events, how impossible it seemed that he could hurt children. Michael guided them to the plaintiff's side, arranging them carefully. Natalie sat closest to the aisle with Michael beside her. Ethan took the seat directly behind, a quiet, solid presence. Jackson and Torres positioned themselves at exits, eyes constantly scanning. The children waited in a separate witness room down the hall with a victim's advocate, spared from seeing Daniel until absolutely necessary. Then Daniel walked in. Natalie's breath caught. She'd mentally prepared for this moment, rehearsed staying calm, but nothing quite captured the visceral shock of seeing him again. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loose on a frame that had always been athletic but now looked gaunt. His face was clean-shaven, hair perfectly styled, eyes clear. He looked like the man she'd married, handsome, successful, completely unthreatening. The performance had already begun. His attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Patricia Valdez, guided him to the defense table. Daniel's eyes swept the room and landed on Natalie. For a moment, something flickered in his expression, rage maybe, or desperation, but then it smoothed into wounded sadness. He mouthed something that looked like please. Natalie looked away. All rise. Judge Sarah Peters entered, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every variety of human awfulness and had patience for none of it. She sat, arranged papers with precise movements, and fixed both attorneys with a look that promised zero tolerance for nonsense. This is a hearing on the motion to dissolve the restraining order in the matter of Carver versus Mercer, she began, her voice carrying authority that filled the small space. We'll also be addressing new allegations of restraining order violation filed yesterday. Ms. Valdez, your client requested this hearing. You may begin. Patricia Valdez stood, smoothing her skirt, projecting confidence. Thank you, Your Honor. My client, Daniel Mercer, has been unjustly separated from the children he helped raise for 8 years. The restraining order was granted based on recordings obtained without his knowledge or consent, which we contend were illegally procured and taken out of context. Mr. Mercer admits he was sometimes strict with the children, but strict discipline is not abuse. It's parenting. Michael was already rising. Objection. Counsel is testifying rather than arguing, and the recordings were obtained legally under California's exception for documenting suspected child abuse. Sustained. Ms. Valdez, stick to legal arguments. Of course, Your Honor. Patricia didn't miss a beat. The petitioner, Mrs. Carver, travels extensively for work and has relied on Mr. Mercer for the day-to-day care of her children. When she discovered his traditional approach to discipline, admittedly old-fashioned but not abusive, she reacted emotionally rather than rationally. In her absence, Mr. Mercer maintained household order, ensured the children completed homework, attended activities, and lived structured lives. The so-called abuse is actually responsible parenting being criminalized because it doesn't align with modern permissive standards. Natalie's hands clenched in her lap. Ethan leaned forward and whispered, "Breathe. She's blowing smoke. Wait for Michael." Judge Peters looked unimpressed. You're characterizing verbal degradation and forced kneeling as traditional discipline? I'm suggesting the recordings lack full context, Your Honor. Moments of frustration edited together to paint my client in the worst possible light. Every parent has said things in anger they regret. That doesn't make them abusive. Mr. Reeves, your response? Michael stood, radiating controlled fury. Your Honor, the defense's characterization requires us to ignore hours of recorded evidence, testimony from a child psychologist documenting severe trauma, and 3 children's consistent accounts of systematic emotional abuse. This isn't a parent having a bad day. This is months of deliberate cruelty. We're prepared to present evidence that will make the abuse undeniable. Then present it. I want to hear from the children first. Are they prepared to give statements? They are, Your Honor. We've arranged video testimony from the witness room to minimize trauma. Proceed. The bailiff wheeled in a large monitor. After a moment of technical adjustment, the screen flickered to life, showing the witness room. Claire sat in a chair that looked too big for her, the victim's advocate beside her. She wore her blue dress, and her hands were folded in her lap, knuckles white from pressure. Even through video feed, Natalie could see her daughter trembling. Judge Peters' expression softened slightly. Hello, Claire. I'm Judge Peters. You're not in any trouble, and you don't have to be nervous. I just need to ask you some questions about your home life. Can you do that for me? Claire's voice came through tinny but clear. Yes, ma'am. Tell me about Daniel Mercer. How did he treat you when your mother was away? Claire took a shaking breath. He was nice when Mom was home. He'd smile and ask about school and act like he cared. But when she left, he changed. He got mean. Can you give me examples of mean behavior? He made us kneel on the hardwood floor for hours sometimes. If we talked back or got bad grades or just annoyed him, my knees would hurt so bad I couldn't sleep after. Mason's knees bled once. Patricia Valdez started to rise, but Judge Peters waved her down. You'll get your cross-examination. Let her finish. Claire continued, words coming faster now, like a dam breaking. He called us burdens. He said our real dad didn't want us, that Mom only married him because she needed someone to babysit us. He said we were disappointments, that we ruined his life. He said Mom was too important for our problems, and if we complained, we'd lose her too. Did you believe him? Yes. Mom was gone a lot. I thought maybe he was right. Maybe we were too much trouble. Tears started down Claire's face. I tried so hard to be perfect, to not need anything, to not make mistakes, but it was never enough. He always found something wrong, and when I broke my violin string by accident, he made me stand in a corner for hours. I had to pee so bad, but I was too scared to move. I'm 12 years old and I almost had an accident like a little kid because I was terrified of him. Natalie felt tears burning her own eyes. Ethan's hand found her shoulder, squeezing gently. Did you tell your mother about this treatment? Judge Peters asked. No, he said she was stressed, that complaining would make her life harder, that good children don't burden their parents with problems. He said if I told, Mom might send me to boarding school to get rid of me. I didn't want to leave my brother and sister alone with him. You were trying to protect them. I'm the oldest. It's my job to protect them. But I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough. Claire's voice broke completely. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I let them get hurt too. Judge Peters' expression had gone from stern to compassionate. Claire, none of this was your responsibility. You're a child. The adults failed you, not the other way around. Thank you for your bravery in speaking today. Ms. Valdez, do you have questions for this witness? Patricia stood, her expression calculating. Claire, you said Mr. Mercer was nice when your mother was home. Is it possible he was actually consistently kind and you're misremembering because you're upset about the divorce? No. Children sometimes have difficulty distinguishing between strict parenting and abuse. Is it possible? I know the difference between strict and mean, Claire said, her voice gaining strength. Strict is enforcing bedtime. Mean is calling me worthless. Strict is grounding me for bad behavior. Mean is making me kneel until my legs go numb and telling me I'm the reason Mom is never home. Your Honor, Patricia tried, the witness is clearly emotional and— The witness is clearly truthful, Judge Peters snapped. I've heard enough. Next child. Mason appeared on screen next, his glasses slightly crooked, his expression terrified. He looked even smaller through the camera, a little boy trying to be brave. The questioning followed similar patterns. Mason described the kneeling, the verbal abuse, the way Daniel grabbed his neck. His voice shook when he recounted being told he'd never be a real man because he cried too much. He said men don't cry, Mason told the judge, that I was weak, that Mom married him because I needed a father figure to teach me to be strong, but he didn't teach me anything except how to be scared. Are you scared now? Judge Peters asked gently. Yes. I'm scared he'll come back. I'm scared Mom will have to go to work and we'll be alone with him again. I'm scared all the time now. I have nightmares where he's chasing me and I can't run fast enough. I wake up crying and I'm so ashamed because that proves he's right. I am weak. Mason, crying doesn't make you weak. Surviving what you survived makes you incredibly strong. That's what Mom says. And Ethan. But I don't feel strong. I feel broken. Patricia's cross-examination was brief and unsuccessful. Mason's genuine terror shone through every word, making any attempt to discredit him look cruel. Then Ava appeared on screen, clutching her stuffed elephant, looking impossibly tiny and vulnerable. Judge Peters' expression softened further. Hi, Ava. That's a nice elephant. What's its name? Mr. Trunk. Ava's voice was barely audible. Mr. Trunk is a good name. Ava, can you tell me about Daniel? How did he make you feel? Scared and sad. He said Mommy doesn't love me. He said that's why she's always gone, because work is more important than me. Did you believe that? Yes. Mommy was gone a lot. I thought maybe I did something bad and she left because of me, like my first daddy left. In the courtroom, Natalie pressed her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. This was worse than the recordings. Hearing her children's raw pain, their mistaken beliefs about her love, the damage Daniel had inflicted, it was unbearable. Did Daniel ever hurt you physically? Judge Peters asked. He grabbed my arm once, really hard. I had bruises, but I wore long sleeves so Mommy wouldn't see. He said if I told, Mommy would stop loving me forever. Do you still have those bruises? No, they went away, but I remember how they hurt. Patricia Valdez wisely chose not to cross-examine the 7-year-old. Even she seemed to recognize that attacking a small child clutching a stuffed animal would destroy whatever sympathy she hoped to build for Daniel. After the children's testimony, Dr. Chen appeared in person, taking the witness stand with professional composure. She outlined her findings in clinical terms that somehow made the abuse even more damning. All 3 children present with trauma symptoms consistent with sustained emotional abuse, she testified. Claire exhibits perfectionism, anxiety, and parentification, feeling responsible for her siblings' welfare in ways inappropriate for her age. Mason shows clear PTSD markers including nightmares, hypervigilance, and panic attacks. Ava displays attachment trauma and regressive behaviors. These symptoms emerged directly from the systematic degradation they experienced. In your professional opinion, Michael asked, would contact with Daniel Mercer be harmful to these children? Absolutely. They're in early stages of healing. Forcing them into contact with their abuser would re-traumatize them and potentially undo months of therapeutic progress. They need safety and stability, not exposure to the person who caused their trauma. Patricia's cross-examination focused on therapy methodology and whether Dr. Chen might be biased toward believing the children. Dr. Chen handled it with practiced ease. I don't simply believe children, she said calmly. I assess patterns. These children's accounts are consistent with each other and with the documented evidence. Their trauma responses are genuine. You can't fake PTSD, Ms. Valdez. The body tells the truth even when people might doubt the words. Next came Ethan. He took the stand looking uncomfortable in slacks and a button-down shirt, clearly more at ease in work clothes. But his testimony was devastating. Michael guided him through the timeline. 6 months of observation, the decision to install cameras, the systematic documentation of abuse. Ethan described hearing Daniel's voice through walls, seeing the children's increasing fear, making the difficult choice to violate privacy in order to protect them. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Michael asked. Because I needed proof. People don't believe maintenance men over wealthy investment bankers. I needed evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. So I watched. I recorded. I documented everything until I had an ironclad case. Ethan's voice roughened with emotion. I lost my own daughter. I couldn't save her, but I could save Mrs. Carver's children. I had to. What did you observe on the day Mrs. Carver came home early? I heard screaming through the window. I checked the cameras and saw all 3 kids kneeling on the floor while Daniel paced around them with whiskey, telling them they were worthless. Claire was crying. Mason was shaking. Ava looked terrified. When Mrs. Carver's car pulled up, I knew I had to stop her from walking in blind. She needed to see what was really happening. And her reaction? She believed me immediately, watched the live feed, saw her children suffering, and she acted without hesitation. That's the mark of a good parent, immediate action to protect children, no matter the personal cost. Patricia's cross-examination tried to paint Ethan as an obsessed stalker who'd manufactured evidence, but the recordings spoke for themselves, and Ethan's military background, his tragic history, his consistent behavior, it all pointed to a man motivated by protection rather than malice. Then Michael played the recordings. The courtroom fell silent as Daniel's voice filled the space, distorted slightly by speakers, but unmistakably him. Your burdens. Your real father didn't want you. The sound of children crying. Your mother hired me to play daddy so she wouldn't have to. More sobbing. You're pathetic. All 3 of you. Judge Peters listened with an expression that grew progressively colder. When the audio ended, she sat back and fixed Daniel with a look that could freeze lava. Mr. Mercer, I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've heard every excuse, every justification, every rationalization for mistreating children. What I just heard wasn't discipline. It wasn't traditional parenting. It was calculated psychological torture of children who had no ability to defend themselves. Patricia stood quickly. Your Honor, my client would like to address the court directly. To explain, I'm sure he would. Mr. Mercer, approach. Daniel stood, buttoning his suit jacket with shaking hands. He moved to the witness stand like a man walking to execution. Up close, Natalie could see the damage 3 weeks had done. The tremor in his hands, the hollowness in his eyes, the desperation bleeding through his polished exterior. Mr. Mercer, Judge Peters began, her tone icy. I'm giving you an opportunity to explain yourself. I suggest you use it wisely. Daniel cleared his throat. Your Honor, I want to start by saying I love those children. I raised them for 8 years. I was there for school plays and soccer games and homework help. I was the one who woke up when they had nightmares, who made their lunches, who taught them to ride bikes. I was their father in every way that mattered. And yet you told them their real father didn't want them. I was frustrated. Natalie, Mrs. Carver, was always working, always gone. I bore the full weight of parenting 3 children who weren't biologically mine. That's a tremendous burden, Your Honor. Sometimes I said things I regret, things I didn't mean. How often did these things you didn't mean occur? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. Occasionally, when stress got high. The recordings span 6 months and show consistent patterns of abuse. That's not occasionally, that's systematic. The recordings are edited. They don't show the good moments. The times I helped with homework or took them for ice cream or... Mr. Mercer, abusers often oscillate between cruelty and kindness. That's how they maintain control. It doesn't excuse the cruelty. Judge Peters leaned forward. Let me be very clear. You made children kneel for hours. You told them they were unwanted. You grabbed a 10-year-old boy by the neck. You created an environment so terrifying that a 12-year-old girl nearly wet herself rather than risk moving from a corner. Do you understand how profoundly you've damaged these children? I never meant to hurt them. Intent doesn't matter when the result is trauma. What matters is what you did and the consequences of your actions. Daniel's composure started cracking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. If I could take it back, if I could do things differently, I never wanted this. I never wanted to be the villain. I just wanted a family. You had a family, and you terrorized it. Please, Your Honor, please give me another chance. I'll do therapy. I'll take parenting classes. I'll never raise my voice again. Just let me see them. Let me apologize. Let me make this right. Some things can't be made right, Mr. Mercer. Some damage runs too deep. Patricia jumped in, desperation making her voice sharp. Your Honor, my client is genuinely remorseful. He's seeking help. He's acknowledged his mistakes. Doesn't that deserve consideration? What deserves consideration is the well-being of 3 traumatized children. Ms. Valdez, I'm now going to address the restraining order violation. Mr. Mercer, you were parked outside the Carver residence on November 15th for 17 minutes. Security footage shows you photographing the property and the children. How do you explain this? Daniel went pale. I just wanted to see them. From a distance. I wasn't going to approach. You violated a court order. You surveilled minor children. You demonstrated you have no respect for legal boundaries. I was desperate. I missed them. I needed to see they were okay. They're okay because you're not in their lives. Judge Peters' voice could have cut glass. Mr. Mercer, you then called Mrs. Carver at 3 a.m. yesterday morning and made threats. Specifically, you told her that a man with nothing to lose is dangerous. Would you like to explain that statement? The blood drained from Daniel's face completely. I didn't mean... I was drunk. I wasn't thinking clearly. I would never actually hurt them. Threatening harm to children is a criminal offense. The only reason you're not being arrested right now is because I'm giving you one final opportunity to demonstrate you understand the gravity of your situation. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Do you understand that if you violate the restraining order again, if you contact Mrs. Carver or her children in any way, if you come within 500 yards of them, you will be immediately arrested and charged? Yes, Your Honor. Do you understand that your relationship with these children is permanently terminated? That you have no parental rights, no custody, no visitation? That you are, in the eyes of the law, a stranger who harmed them? Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Whether genuine or performative, Natalie couldn't tell. I understand. Judge Peters shuffled papers, her expression carved from granite. Then here's my ruling. The restraining order will not only remain in place, it will be extended to a permanent injunction. Mr. Mercer is prohibited from all contact with Claire Mason and Ava Carver for a period of no less than 10 years, at which point the now adult children may petition to modify or dissolve the order if they choose. He is prohibited from coming within 500 yards of their residence, their schools, or any location where they regularly appear. He is prohibited from all forms of contact, including phone calls, emails, social media, or third-party communication. Patricia tried one last time. Your Honor, 10 years is excessive for what amounts to overly strict parenting. Ms. Valdez, I've heard the evidence. I've seen 3 traumatized children. I've listened to recordings that made my skin crawl. 10 years is lenient. If I had my way, it would be permanent, effective immediately. But the law requires I allow for future modification. However, Mr. Mercer, understand this. If those children petition to see you in 10 years, it will be their choice, not yours. You have forfeited all parental authority. You will also be enrolled in a batterer's intervention program and undergo psychological evaluation. If you fail to comply, criminal charges may be filed. Your Honor, Daniel started. I'm not finished. You will also pay child support for all 3 children until they reach adulthood, despite having no custody. The amount will be determined based on your income. Mrs. Carver will retain sole legal and physical custody. She will make all decisions regarding the children's upbringing, education, and medical care. You have no say, no input, no rights. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Honor. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Then we're done here. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed like thunder. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Daniel stood, his face crumbling, and looked across the courtroom at Natalie. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I never meant... Bailiff, remove Mr. Mercer, Judge Peters said crisply. As bailiffs escorted Daniel toward the exit, he kept looking back, kept trying to speak. Patricia Valdez gathered her papers with tight, angry movements, and Natalie sat frozen, unable to process that it was over. Actually over. Michael turned to her, his expression triumphant. We won. Complete victory. He can't touch them. It's really over? It's really over. Ethan leaned forward from behind. You okay? Natalie realized she was crying, not from sadness or fear, but from relief so overwhelming it felt physical. The weight she'd carried for 3 weeks, for 8 years really, the weight of not knowing her children were suffering, lifted all at once. I need to see them, she said. Right now. I need my kids. They found the children in the witness room, clustered together on a couch with the victim's advocate. All 3 faces turned toward the door when it opened, expressions cycling rapidly from hope to fear to desperate need for reassurance. It's over, Natalie said, dropping to her knees in front of them. You're safe. He can't come near you for 10 years minimum. The judge ruled in our favor on everything. Everything? Claire asked cautiously, like she didn't dare believe it. Everything. Full custody for me. No visitation for him. Permanent restraining order. You never have to see him again unless you choose to when you're adults. We won? Mason's voice was small and disbelieving. We won. Then all 3 children were in her arms, crying and laughing simultaneously. The victim's advocate quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. Ethan stood in the doorway, his own eyes wet, keeping watch one final time. Is it really over? Ava asked against Natalie's shoulder. He's really gone? He's really gone, baby. He can't hurt you anymore. Any of you. What if he comes back anyway? Claire's old fear, the hypervigilance that would take time to fade. Then he goes to jail. And we have security, and Ethan, and each other. We're protected, sweetheart, all of us. They stayed like that for a long time, tangled together on a courthouse couch, crying out weeks of tension and fear. Eventually, they had to leave. Other cases needed the room, and Judge Peters had requested to see them briefly in her chambers. The judge's private office was surprisingly warm, filled with family photos and children's artwork. Judge Peters looked less intimidating without the robe, more like someone's grandmother than an intimidating legal authority. "I wanted to speak with you privately," she said, addressing the children directly. "What you did today took incredible courage. Testifying is hard for adults, let alone children. You should be very proud of yourselves." "Thank you, ma'am," Claire said quietly. "I also want you to know that what happened to you wasn't your fault. Sometimes adults fail children. Sometimes people who should protect you hurt you instead. That's not a reflection on you, that's on them." Judge Peters pulled out 3 small cards from her desk. "These have my direct number. If you ever feel unsafe, if Daniel violates the order, if anything happens that makes you afraid, call me. Day or night, I'll make sure you're protected." The children took the cards solemnly, understanding the weight of what was being offered. A judge giving out her personal number wasn't standard procedure. This was extraordinary care from a woman who'd probably seen too many children fall through cracks in the system. "Thank you," Natalie said, her voice thick. "For everything, for listening, for believing them. That's my job. And Mrs. Carver, take care of yourself too. Your children need you healthy and whole. Don't forget that." They left the courthouse through a back exit, avoiding media that had gathered out front. The convoy reassembled. 3 cars, 3 routes, maximum caution, even though the legal threat had been neutralized. Because restraining orders were paper, and Daniel had already proven he didn't respect boundaries. But the drive home felt different. Lighter, somehow. Ava chattered in the back seat about wanting ice cream. Ethan drove with one hand, the other tapping the steering wheel to music from the radio. And Natalie felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of peace. At home, Anna had prepared a celebration dinner, all the children's favorites without regard for nutrition or balance. Pasta and garlic bread and chocolate cake. They ate in the dining room, which they'd reclaimed 2 weeks ago through sheer force of will, and Dr. Chen's advice about not letting Daniel's ghost haunt their spaces. Jackson and Torres joined them, along with Michael, who'd followed them home to finalize paperwork. Even Dr. Chen stopped by briefly to congratulate her patients on their bravery. The house filled with voices and laughter, pushing back against months of silence and fear. "Speech," Ethan called, raising a glass of sparkling cider. "The victor should say something." Natalie stood, looking around at the unlikely family assembled in her dining room. A housekeeper who'd become surrogate grandmother, a lawyer who'd fought like their lives depended on it, a therapist who'd guided them through darkness, 2 security guards who'd stood watch without complaint, and Ethan, who'd sacrificed privacy and comfort and safety to protect children who weren't his. "I don't have words adequate for what you've all done," Natalie began. 3 weeks ago, my world fell apart. I discovered my children had been suffering in silence while I was blind to it. I've never felt more like a failure as a mother. Mom, Claire started, but Natalie held up a hand. "Let me finish. I failed to see what was happening, but all of you helped me fix it. You stood with us when you didn't have to. You believed my children when society often doesn't believe children. You fought for them, protected them, helped them heal. I can never repay those debts. But I promise you this. My children will grow up knowing what real love looks like, what real protection means. They'll know that good people exist and that when bad things happen, communities form to fight back. That's the gift you've given us. Not just safety, but hope." "To hope," Michael said, raising his glass higher. "To hope," everyone echoed. They drank sparkling cider and ate too much cake and stayed up too late because nobody wanted the day to end. Nobody wanted to break the spell of victory and relief. Eventually, though, exhaustion claimed the children. Claire fell asleep on the couch. Mason dozed at the table. Ava curled in Natalie's lap, breathing deeply. "Let's get them to bed," Ethan said softly. Together, they carried 3 sleeping children upstairs. Each one went to their own room tonight. Another small victory, another reclamation of personal space. Natalie tucked Ava in, kissing her forehead and leaving the nightlight on. Then Claire, who murmured, "Love you, Mom," without fully waking. Finally Mason, who clutched his pillow and turned toward the wall, seeking the comfort of solid barrier. Downstairs, the house slowly emptied. Michael left with promises to file final paperwork. Jackson and Torres did a final sweep and headed to the guest house where they'd set up temporary quarters. Dr. Chen departed with reminders about next week's sessions. Anna cleaned the kitchen, humming softly. Finally, it was just Natalie and Ethan on the back patio again, their familiar spot. The pool glowed in the darkness. Stars wheeled overhead. The night was cool and clear. "We did it," Natalie said wonderingly. "We actually did it. You did it. I just helped. You did more than help. You saved them." Ethan was quiet for a moment, staring at the water. "When Emily died, I thought my purpose died with her. I couldn't see a future where I mattered to anyone, where I did good in the world. And then I heard your kids crying through a wall, and something woke up in me. Anger at first, but then purpose. I could help them. I could document the abuse, protect them, make sure someone knew. It gave me a reason to keep breathing. I'm glad you did. Keep breathing, I mean. We needed you. I needed you too. All of you. This weird little family we've built, it's healing me as much as hopefully I've helped heal them." Natalie looked at this man who'd appeared in her darkest hour. Maintenance supervisor turned guardian angel, broken widower turned protector. He'd asked for nothing and given everything. "Stay," she said impulsively. "Not just in the guest house. Stay with us. Be part of this family officially. The kids love you. They trust you. And She stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. Ethan turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "You what?" "I trust you too. I care about you. You've become essential to us in ways I didn't expect. I don't want you to leave when things stabilize. I want you here." "As what? Your employee, your friend?" "As family, whatever that means. We'll figure it out as we go." Ethan smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him in weeks. "Family, I like that. I haven't had family in a long time." "Then it's settled. You're stuck with us." Could be worse places to be stuck. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd survived trauma and emerged on the other side somehow intact. Not undamaged, they all carried scars now, visible and invisible, but intact. Together. Building something new from the rubble of what had been destroyed. Inside the house, a child cried out briefly, then settled. Normal nightmare, not crisis. Natalie started to rise, but Ethan gestured for her to stay. "I'll check. You've had a long day." He disappeared inside, and Natalie heard his footsteps on the stairs. Heard his gentle voice murmuring reassurance. Heard the child, Mason probably, settle back into sleep. When Ethan returned, he had a small smile. "Bad dream, but he went right back to sleep when I told him everyone was safe." "He believes you. They all believe you. That's a responsibility I don't take lightly. I know, that's why they're right to believe you." The night deepened around them. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Healing wasn't linear. Trauma didn't disappear overnight, and building new normal would take time. But tonight, they were safe. The threat was neutralized. The children slept peacefully. And two broken people sat on a patio, keeping watch together, finding purpose in protection and healing in unexpected family. "Thank you," Natalie said again, knowing the words were inadequate but needing to say them anyway. "Thank you for trusting me," Ethan replied, "for believing me that first day, for acting immediately, for being the mother they needed." "I'm still figuring out how to be that mother. We're all still figuring it out. That's okay. We'll figure it out together." Together. That word again. It had become Natalie's favorite word. Together they'd survived. Together they'd fought. Together they'd won. And together they'd heal. 6 months passed like water over stones, slowly wearing down sharp edges, smoothing rough places, reshaping everything it touched. Winter gave way to spring, and the jacaranda trees lining the Palisades streets exploded in purple blooms that carpeted the sidewalks. The world kept turning despite trauma, indifferent to human pain, but offering small beauties as compensation. Natalie stood in the kitchen on a Saturday morning in May, watching Ethan teach Mason how to make pancakes from scratch. Her son wore an apron 3 sizes too big, flour dusting his glasses as he carefully measured ingredients. Ethan stood beside him, patient and encouraging, pointing out when the batter needed more milk, or explaining why you couldn't overmix, or the pancakes would turn rubbery. Like this? Mason asked, folding ingredients together with exaggerated gentleness. Perfect, you're a natural. Really, you're not just saying that. I don't just say things. If you mess up, I'll tell you. But you're doing it right. Mason beamed, and Natalie felt that familiar tightness in her chest, the one that appeared whenever she witnessed her children experiencing normal, healthy adult attention. 6 months ago, Mason had flinched at raised voices and apologized compulsively for minor mistakes. Now he laughed when he spilled milk and asked questions without fear. The change was remarkable and heartbreaking simultaneously, proof of both resilience and how much damage had been done. Claire wandered downstairs in pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in that severe ponytail she'd worn for months. Small changes like that, loose hair, casual clothes, the willingness to be imperfect, marked her healing more clearly than any therapy report. "Morning," she mumbled, heading straight for the coffee pot. "You're 12, Natalie said automatically. "No coffee." "It's mostly milk," Claire argued, but she was smiling. They'd had this argument 17 times in the past month. It had become routine, comfortable, normal family bickering that hurt nobody. "Hot chocolate is in the kettle." Claire switched course without complaint, pouring cocoa instead. She settled at the kitchen island, watching Mason cook. "He's actually doing it right. I'm impressed." "Ethan's a good teacher." "Yeah, he is." Claire's voice went soft, contemplative. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you and Ethan, is he going to stay? Like permanently?" Natalie set down her coffee mug carefully, buying time to formulate an answer. The truth was complicated. Ethan lived in the guest house, maintained professional boundaries, never presumed on their family dynamic. But he was also present for every dinner, every homework session, every movie night. He fixed broken things and taught life skills, and listened to childish concerns with complete attention. He existed in their lives like a foundation, essential but often invisible, holding everything up without demanding recognition. "He's family," Natalie said carefully. "However that looks, whatever that means, he's part of us now. He's not going anywhere unless he chooses to." "But do you want him to stay? Like, want? Claire, what are you really asking?" Her daughter fiddled with her mug, not meeting Natalie's eyes. "I see how you look at him sometimes, and how he looks at you. When you're not paying attention, it's different than before, different than with Daniel. Different how? Safer. Happier. Like you're not performing or pretending. Like you can just be." Natalie's throat tightened. When had her daughter become so perceptive? Though trauma did that, forced children to become experts at reading adult emotions, at anticipating mood shifts, at protecting themselves through hyper-awareness. Another gift from Daniel, though this one might actually serve Claire well in life. "I care about Ethan very much," Natalie admitted. "But I'm not rushing into anything. We're all still healing, and you three come first, always." "What if we want you to be happy too?" Claire looked up finally, her brown eyes serious. "What if we think Ethan makes you happy? What if we like having him around and wouldn't mind if he was around even more?" "Are you matchmaking, Claire Carver?" "I'm just saying. Mason told me yesterday that he wishes Ethan was his real dad, and Ava draws pictures of our family where Ethan's always in them. We've noticed. We're not blind." Before Natalie could respond, Ava burst into the kitchen like a small blonde tornado, still in her Princess Elsa nightgown, clutching a piece of paper. "Look what I made. It's all of us at the beach." She thrust the drawing at Natalie, crayon rendering of 5 stick figures on a sandy beach, waves behind them, sun overhead. Natalie, Claire, Mason, and Ava were easy to identify. The 5th figure, taller and broader, stood slightly apart but clearly part of the group. Ethan, rendered in blue crayon, smiling his rare smile. "This is beautiful, baby. Can I keep it?" "It's for the fridge. Anna says the fridge is for important art." Then important art it is. As Ava skipped away to show the drawing to Mason and Ethan, Claire raised her eyebrows significantly. See, we've all noticed. Noticed what? Ethan asked, appearing with a plate of perfectly golden pancakes. Nothing, Claire and Natalie said simultaneously, then laughed. Breakfast became the chaotic, joyful mess that typified their mornings now. Mason's pancakes were slightly lumpy but edible. Ava demanded hers be cut into stars, which Ethan accomplished with cookie cutters and infinite patience. Claire actually ate 2 full pancakes instead of picking at her food, another victory marked and celebrated silently by Natalie and Doctor Chen, who'd noted that Claire's relationship with food had suffered during Daniel's abuse. After breakfast, the children scattered to various activities. Claire had violin practice. She'd returned to music 3 months ago after a long break, playing now because she wanted to rather than from obligation. Mason was building an elaborate Lego city that had taken over the dining room. Ava had art projects spread across the patio, creating what she called fairy houses from twigs and flowers. Natalie and Ethan ended up in the garden, ostensibly to discuss repairing the irrigation system, but really just existing in shared space. They'd fallen into this pattern, finding reasons to be near each other without naming what was happening between them. 6 months of proximity had built something neither seemed ready to define. Claire asked me this morning if you're staying, Natalie said, pulling weeds from around the rose bushes. Permanently, Ethan's hand stilled on the sprinkler head he was adjusting. What did you tell her? That you're family. That you're not going anywhere unless you choose to. She glanced at him. Was I right? I have nowhere else I'd rather be. That's not the same as saying you want to stay. I want to stay. The words came out fierce, almost desperate. I want to wake up every morning and fix Mason breakfast and help Claire with homework and listen to Ava's elaborate stories about fairy kingdoms. I want to repair broken fences and teach life skills and be the person they call when something's wrong. I want... He stopped, jaw working. What do you want, Ethan? This. All of this. You and 3 kids who aren't mine but feel like mine. Morning coffee and family dinners and the noise of people who care about each other. I want what I lost. Not the same people. I'll always miss Rebecca and Emily. But the same feeling, the same purpose, the same mattering to someone. Natalie set down her trowel and moved closer. They were inches apart, close enough that she could see the silver threads in his dark hair, the lines around his eyes that spoke of grief carried and survived. Close enough to smell soap and coffee and the faint scent of motor oil that never quite washed away. You matter to us, she said quietly. To the kids. To Anna. To me. How do I matter to you? The question hung between them, heavy with months of unspoken feeling. Natalie could deflect, could keep things safe and undefined, but Claire's words echoed, what if we want you to be happy too? When I come downstairs and see you teaching Mason to cook, I feel grateful, Natalie began slowly, choosing words carefully. When you fix something broken, I feel relieved. When you play Tea Party with Ava, I feel blessed. And when you look at me the way you're looking at me right now, I feel things I haven't felt in years. Hope, safety, the possibility that maybe someone could love me, not despite my flaws and failures, but with full knowledge of them. Natalie, let me finish. I'm terrified. My track record with men is catastrophic. I chose wrong twice. My first husband abandoned us. My second husband tortured our children. How do I trust my own judgment? How do I risk letting someone close when I've proven I can't distinguish good from bad? By recognizing that I'm neither of them. Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not your first husband who ran from responsibility. I'm not Daniel who used control to compensate for inadequacy. I'm a broken man who found purpose in protecting your children, who fell in love with them first and then with you, who doesn't want to change you or control you or ask you to be anything other than exactly who you are. You love me? The words came out whispered, disbelieving. How could I not? You're fierce and flawed and you make terrible pancakes. You work too hard and forget to eat lunch. And sometimes you're so focused on fixing things, you miss what's right in front of you. And you're also the bravest person I've ever met. You saw your children suffering and acted immediately. You dismantled your entire life to protect them. You chose them over career and reputation and the comfortable lie that everything was fine. How could I not love that? Tears blurred Natalie's vision. I'm not brave. I'm terrified constantly. Brave doesn't mean unafraid. It means acting despite fear. I'm afraid of this. Of you. Of what happens if I let myself care and everything falls apart again. Then we fall apart and rebuild. That's what people do. That's what we've been doing for 6 months. Natalie laughed through tears. This is the worst timing. We're still in crisis mode. The kids are still healing. Everything's fragile. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing, and we've been building this, whatever this is, for months. We just haven't named it. Ethan reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat, and wiped tears from her cheek with calloused gentleness. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I'm just telling you the truth. I love you. I love your children. I want to be here. However that looks, whatever pace feels right. I'm not going anywhere. What if the kids aren't ready? What if it confuses them or makes them feel... Mom? Claire's voice came from behind them. Natalie spun to find all 3 children standing in the garden doorway. Claire looked knowing. Mason seemed hopeful. Ava was practically vibrating with excitement. How long have you been there? Natalie asked, mortified. Long enough, Claire said. And just so you know, we're ready. We talked about it, all 3 of us. We want Ethan to stay. Like, really stay. Not just in the guest house, as part of the family, if that's what you both want. Mason stepped forward, looking shy but determined. Ethan's nice to us. He doesn't get mad when we make mistakes. He teaches us stuff and listens when we talk. He makes you smile, Mom. We want him to stay. And he gives the best hugs, Ava added seriously. That's very important in a family. Ethan had gone still, his expression cycling through shock and hope and overwhelming emotion. He looked at the 3 children he'd saved, who were now saving him right back, and his eyes went bright with tears. You guys talked about this? He managed. Obviously, Claire said. We're not stupid. We see what's happening, and we approve. Unanimously. Unanimously means we all agree, Ava explained helpfully. We learned it in school. Natalie looked between her children and Ethan, this man who'd appeared in her darkest hour and stayed through every painful moment after. This man who asked for nothing and gave everything. This man who loved them all, not perfectly, but genuinely. I guess we're doing this, she said, feeling terrified and exhilarated simultaneously. Guess so, Ethan replied, his smile breaking like dawn. So you're together now? Mason asked. Like, officially? We're figuring it out, Natalie said, slowly, with lots of talking and therapy and making sure everyone's comfortable. Can Ethan move into the main house? Ava asked. The guest house is too far away. That's a conversation for adults to have, Natalie said quickly, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. But eventually? Claire pressed. Because it would make sense. He's here every day anyway, and the guest house is kind of small. We'll see. No rushing. We're all still healing. But we're healing together, Mason said. That's what Dr. Chen says. Healing happens in community. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice because I'm short. They all laughed, the sound carrying across the garden and into the house where Anna was probably listening and smiling. The sound of a family, messy, complicated, built from broken pieces, but whole nonetheless. The weeks that followed brought their own challenges. Healing remained non-linear. Claire had a panic attack when she got a B+ on an English paper, convinced that imperfection meant failure meant punishment. It took 2 hours and both Natalie and Dr. Chen to talk her down, to remind her that grades were just feedback, not judgments of her worth. Mason's nightmares decreased in frequency but increased in intensity when they came. Once a week became once every 2 weeks, but the dreams left him screaming and shaking, unable to articulate what he'd seen. Ethan started staying in Mason's room on bad nights, sleeping in the chair beside his bed, providing silent protection that helped more than any words. Ava regressed occasionally, reverting to behaviors from months earlier, refusing to let Natalie out of sight, needing constant reassurance, waking multiple times each night. Dr. Chen called it normal, expected, part of trauma's unpredictable tide. Forward progress, backward slide, forward again. The trajectory was positive even when individual days felt like defeat. But there were victories, too. Claire auditioned for youth orchestra and made first chair violin. Mason joined soccer and scored his first goal, celebrating with unself-conscious joy instead of fear that success would bring punishment. Ava started kindergarten and made friends, hosting play dates where she laughed so hard she got hiccups. And Natalie learned to be present. She cut her consulting hours further, turning down projects that would demand too much time. She attended every school event, every practice, every performance. She learned to make decent spaghetti and barely edible cookies. She read bedtime stories and checked homework, and sat through lengthy explanations of video game strategies that meant nothing to her but everything to Mason. She also learned to accept help. Anna became more than housekeeper. She was grandmother figure who dispensed wisdom and tamales in equal measure. Jackson and Torres, who'd stayed on permanent retainer, became uncles who taught the kids self-defense and made them laugh with terrible jokes. Dr. Chen remained their anchor, guiding them through rough waters with professional skill and genuine care. And Ethan. Ethan became everything. Not father, the children still called him Ethan, and he never tried to replace their biological father's memory. But he was mentor and protector and friend. He was the person Mason called when he had car trouble after getting his license years later. He was the one Claire sought out for advice about college applications. He was Ava's favorite audience for elaborate fantasy stories. And for Natalie, he became partner in ways Daniel never had been. Equal, supportive without being controlling, present without demanding all her attention. He pushed her to maintain her own identity even while building a family. He reminded her to schedule lunch with friends, to pursue hobbies, to be something other than just a mother. They moved slowly, cautiously. It took 3 months before they went on an actual date. Dinner at a quiet restaurant while Anna stayed with the kids. 6 months before Ethan officially moved into the main house, taking a bedroom on the opposite end from the children and Natalie, maintaining appropriate boundaries. 8 months before they told the kids they were seriously committed, ready to build something permanent. One evening, nearly a year after that terrible day when Natalie came home early, they gathered in the living room, the same living room where Daniel had made children kneel, now reclaimed through new memories of game nights and movie marathons and lazy Sunday mornings. "We want to talk to you about something," Natalie began, her heart hammering despite knowing the children would support this. "Ethan and I have been talking about the future, about making our family official in a legal sense." "You're getting married?" Ava squealed, bouncing in her seat. "Eventually, maybe. We haven't decided on that yet, but we want to do something more immediate. Ethan wants to formally adopt all 3 of you." Silence. 3 children stared at Ethan with expressions ranging from shock to hope to cautious disbelief. "Adopt us?" Mason repeated. "Like legally?" "Like legally," Ethan confirmed, his voice rough with emotion. "I know I'm not your biological father. I know Daniel was legally your stepfather, even though he failed you. But I'd like to be your father in every way that matters, emotionally, legally, permanently. If that's something you want, if it's too much or too soon, we can wait. But I wanted you to know that's what I want, to be your dad. Officially." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "You want to be our dad?" "I already am, in my heart. Have been for months. But I want it recognized. I want my name on your emergency contacts as parent, not family friend. I want legal authority to protect you if anything happens to your mom. I want you to know that I'm committed, permanently, forever. You're stuck with me." "What about our real dad?" Mason asked quietly. "Our biological one. Doesn't this erase him?" "No," Natalie said firmly. "Your biological father will always be your biological father. His genetics, his heritage, that's part of who you are. This doesn't erase that. This just adds to your family. You can have multiple fathers, one who gave you life, and one who chooses you every single day." "And Daniel?" Claire's voice was barely a whisper. "Daniel will be legally removed from any parental connection. The adoption would finalize that. He'd have no claim, no rights, no connection. You'd be Ethan's children in the eyes of the law." Ava climbed into Ethan's lap, studying his face seriously. "Do we have to call you Dad? You can call me whatever feels right. Ethan, Dad, Papa, Sir Fixes-a-Lot, whatever works for you." "Sir Fixes-a-Lot is silly." Your sister came up with it. Claire's silly too. Hey, Claire protested, but she was smiling through tears. Mason stood and approached Ethan, stopping just out of arm's reach. He'd shot up 6 inches in the past year, nearly matching Ethan's height. Soon he'd be taller, but in that moment he looked young and vulnerable and desperately hopeful. Would you really want us? Mason asked. Even knowing we're damaged? Even knowing we have nightmares and therapy appointments and problems? Ethan shifted Ava gently aside and stood to face Mason directly. You're not damaged. You're survivors. And yes, I want you. I've wanted you since the day I first heard you crying and decided to do something about it. You're brave and smart and kind despite everything you've survived. You're everything I'd want in a son. Really? Really? Mason launched himself forward, wrapping Ethan in a fierce hug. Ethan caught him, held him, pressed his face to Mason's hair and cried openly. Within seconds, Ava joined the embrace. Then Claire, moving slowly but deliberately, adding herself to the tangle of arms and tears and overwhelming emotion. Natalie watched her family, biological and chosen, broken and healing, messy and perfect, and felt pieces of her heart that had been shattered finally begin to knit together. Not seamlessly, the scars would always show, but whole enough to function, strong enough to love again. The adoption process took 4 months. Paperwork and court appearances and home studies. Daniel had to be notified, legal requirement, and his attorney made token protests before accepting the inevitable. Daniel himself had moved to another state, reportedly in rehab and intensive therapy. Natalie hoped he was getting help. Not for him, but because broken people who didn't heal just broke others. On a warm October afternoon, they stood in a different courtroom with a different judge who smiled at them like they were the best thing she'd seen all week. It's rare I get to participate in something purely joyful, Judge Martinez said, reviewing final documents. Usually family court is heartbreak and damage control, but this is healing. This is a man stepping up to be father to children who desperately needed one. This is a family choosing each other deliberately. This is beautiful. She signed papers with flourish, stamped documents officially, and declared, by the power vested in me by the state of California, Ethan James Cole is hereby recognized as the legal father of Claire Elizabeth Carver, Mason Thomas Carver, and Ava Grace Carver, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. Congratulations. Ethan pulled all 3 children into his arms, his voice breaking as he said, I love you. All of you. So much. We love you too, Dad, Claire whispered, using the title for the first time. Dad. Simple word. Enormous weight. Ethan closed his eyes against overwhelming emotion, holding his children because they were his now, legally and forever, and probably sending prayers of gratitude to the family he'd lost, thanking them for leading him to this second chance. The celebration afterwards was pure joy. Anna had prepared a feast. Michael brought champagne for adults and sparkling cider for kids. Dr. Chen attended, smiling at her patient's progress. Jackson and Torres showed up with a ridiculous cake shaped like a toolbox because Ethan always fixed things. Friends from school, neighbors who'd supported them, even Judge Peters who'd presided over the restraining order hearing, all gathered to celebrate family built from ashes. That evening, after everyone left and the children finally went to bed exhausted from excitement, Natalie and Ethan ended up on their patio. Their spot. The place where they'd kept watch over healing and confessed feelings and planned futures. How does it feel? Natalie asked, leaning against his shoulder. Being a father again? Terrifying. Amazing. Like I can breathe fully for the first time in 5 years. Ethan wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. Thank you. For what? For trusting me, for letting me be part of this, for giving me purpose when I thought mine was gone forever. You saved us. I should be thanking you. We saved each other. That's how family works. Natalie tilted her face up, studying this man who'd become her partner, her children's father, her unexpected salvation. Ethan Cole, I love you. Took you long enough to say it. I'm slow sometimes, but I'm sure. I love you. I love our life. I love what we've built from something terrible. I love you too. Have for months. Probably fell in love the moment you believed me without question and chose your kids instantly. That's when I knew you were extraordinary. I'm really not. You really are. He kissed her then, soft and sure and filled with promise. Their first real kiss without fear or hesitation, without worry that they were moving too fast or confusing the children. Their first kiss as committed partners building something permanent. When they broke apart, Natalie rested her forehead against his. Think we'll make it, long term? I think we've survived worse than normal relationship challenges. I think we communicate and work together and put the kids first. I think we have better odds than most. That's not very romantic. You want romantic? Fine. I think you're the love of my life. I think we were supposed to find each other exactly when we did. I think we'll grow old together watching our kids become amazing adults. I think we'll have grandchildren someday who'll call me grandpa and drive us crazy in the best ways. I think this is forever. That's better. They sat under stars surrounded by the sounds of home, pool filter humming, wind chimes from Ava's craft project tinkling, the house settling into comfortable night sounds. Inside, 3 children slept peacefully, protected and loved. Tomorrow would bring challenges because healing was ongoing. But tomorrow would also bring small joys, Mason's soccer practice, Claire's orchestra rehearsal, Ava's art class, normal life, extraordinary only in its ordinariness. You know what I realized today? Natalie said softly. Daniel tried to destroy us. He tried to break my children, to make them believe they were worthless and unwanted. And instead, his cruelty led us to you, led us to healing, led us to becoming stronger. He meant to cause damage, and instead he accidentally brought us the person who'd help us rebuild. I don't think it was an accident. I think the universe has a way of balancing scales. You believe that? I have to. Otherwise, losing Rebecca and Emily was meaningless suffering. But if their deaths led me here, to saving your children, to becoming part of this family, then maybe there's purpose in pain. Maybe tragedy can transform into something beautiful if we let it. That's a lot of faith. Yeah, but look at us. Broken people who found each other and built something whole. If that's not proof of possibility, I don't know what is. Natalie thought about the journey that had brought them here, the trauma and terror, the legal battles and sleepless nights, the therapy sessions and hard conversations. She thought about her children's resilience, their capacity to trust again despite betrayal. She thought about Ethan's courage in opening his heart after devastating loss. She thought about her own growth from absent workaholic to present mother. We're going to be okay, she said, and for the first time in years she believed it completely. Better than okay. We're going to be happy. Happy sounds nice. Happy sounds perfect. Months turned into years. Claire graduated high school with honors and a full scholarship to Juilliard. Mason became an engineer using skills Ethan had taught him in that garage workshop. Ava pursued art, her work displayed in galleries, still drawing families with love evident in every line. They all returned home regularly, filling the house with laughter and arguments and the comfortable chaos of family. Claire brought boyfriends for Ethan's approval. Mason called for advice on job offers and apartments. Ava came home with paint in her hair and wild stories about the art world. And through it all, Natalie and Ethan remained the foundation. Not perfect, they argued about finances and parenting approaches, and whose turn it was to clean the garage. But solid, committed, choosing each other daily. On their wedding day, a small ceremony in the backyard 5 years after the adoption, Claire gave a toast that left everyone in tears. Most people don't get to choose their family, she said, glass raised. Biology decides, and you make the best of it. But we got to choose. Mom chose us by fighting for us when we needed her most. Ethan chose us by staying when he could have walked away. And we chose them right back. We chose to heal together, to build something new from something broken, to become the family we all needed. That's what today celebrates. Not just mom and dad getting married, but all of us choosing each other, again and permanently. To family, biological, chosen, and everything in between. To family, everyone echoed. Daniel's name came up occasionally over the years, usually when one of the children had a breakthrough in therapy or needed to process old pain. He'd remarried, reportedly to a woman without children. He'd stayed in therapy, gotten sober, sent occasional letters that remained unopened. The children could choose to contact him when they became adults, but none ever did. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. The house eventually sold when Natalie and Ethan downsized after the children moved out, but memories stayed vivid, both dark and light, trauma and healing coexisting in complicated tapestry. That was life. That was survival. That was the human experience distilled. On the evening of Ava's art gallery opening 20 years after that terrible day, the family gathered to celebrate her success. Ava's installation piece, a massive sculpture titled Broken Made Beautiful, dominated the gallery. She'd created it from shattered glass and twisted metal, reformed into something stunning and whole. "It's about our family," she explained during her artist talk, "about how trauma breaks us, but healing can reshape those broken pieces into something new, something stronger. My family was shattered, but we rebuilt. We took broken parts and created something beautiful. That's what this piece represents." Natalie stood between Claire and Mason, Ethan's arm around her shoulders, and felt the decades between that dark moment and this bright one. She thought about the CEO she'd been, powerful but blind, successful but failing at what mattered most. She thought about the mother she'd become, present and imperfect, choosing her children daily. She thought about coming home 3 hours early, guided by instinct she couldn't name. About Ethan's courage in documenting abuse and his willingness to show her truth. About her children's resilience and capacity for healing. About the family they'd built from wreckage. "You did good, Mom," Claire whispered, reading her thoughts. "We all did good," Natalie replied. "Together." "Together," Mason echoed. "Always together," Ava added. And Ethan, her partner, and the father her children chose, pulled them all closer and said what he'd been saying for 20 years. "I love you, all of you, so much." Some endings are really beginnings. Some breaks lead to better building. Some trauma transforms into strength. Not easily, not painlessly, but possibly. That was the lesson Natalie Carver learned in the years after coming home early and finding her world shattered. That you could survive the unsurvivable. That you could heal from the unhealable. That you could take broken pieces and build something not just whole, but beautiful. That families weren't just born. They were chosen, fought for, protected fiercely. They were built one difficult day at a time, one brave choice at a time, one moment of choosing love over fear at a time. And standing in that art gallery, surrounded by her children and the man who'd saved them all, Natalie felt complete. Not perfect, not undamaged, but whole in the ways that mattered. Healed enough to love, brave enough to trust, strong enough to choose joy despite knowing intimately how much life could hurt. That was enough. More than enough. That was everything.